Welcome, everybody. We're certainly pleased to be able to bring this public forum to the city of Hartford. For those of you that have been paying attention to the work we've been doing with the 119K Commission, we've been exerting a traveling show, or what I like to call community conversations. This is our fourth or fifth out of the community sixth out of seventh. All right, I missed one. I was on vacation. But the whole reason we've been doing the traveling show is so that we can hear from the stakeholders in the communities what they're experiencing and what they're seeing in their communities. So we not only want to call this to order, but we want to thank all of you for coming out to spend some time with us this evening, to listening to what our panelists have to say, and then providing us some of your own experience. So with that said, I will then turn this over to Mayor Arulapam.
Arulapam, thank you.
There it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. It is great to be with all of you. Thank you for coming to the beautiful city of Hartford. I was telling somebody on the way in, you know, this building, this land was donated to us by J.P. Morgan in the 1880s, and this beautiful old building was built on it. And Hartford has had good times and you know, challenging times, and in those good times when we were more flush with cash, we've failed to invest in central AC. And so I'm sorry for the temperature in here, but it is great to be with you at our city hall. Hartford is a really appropriate place to have a conversation on education. You know, we have the second oldest high school in the nation after Boston Latin. Hartford High is the second oldest public high school in the entire nation. We are the birthplace of Henry Barnard, who was the first Secretary of Education for the U.S., and many view as the father of the idea of public schools in America. One of the really early proponents that said, you know, if we really are serious about opportunity being available for all people, regardless of race or gender or socioeconomic background, then we as a society need to be responsible for education. And still, centuries later, Hartford is a prime example of the fact that that dream is unrealized. And I think it's hard to talk about the impact of Opportunity Youth without talking about inequitable funding of schools in the state that has led to school districts like Hartford's, in which kids growing up here, because of the zip code they're born into and the school system that they inherit, are faced several yards back from their counterparts in neighboring towns. And when we talk about the opportunities for young people in this city, I think it's impossible to talk about building an equitable city, building an equitable society without addressing school systems like Hartford's that still struggle to retain teachers, to keep budgets, and with rising costs and revenue at the state level that doesn't keep up with it. And many of you saw in this last year, our school system faced a $77 million deficit. And there are many small individual contributors to that, but at a systemic level, I think we all have to understand that there's an inequity in a school system in a city as large as Hartford, with kids who have the level of need that Hartford students have, that is unable to keep pace with the rising costs of education. And so in a couple of weeks ago, I impaneled the Blue Ribbon Commission here in the city of Hartford to look at our school system, and it included everybody at the table who we thought really needed to have a say in that conversation. It was state legislators, it was community leaders, it was members of our superintendent's team, the chair of our Board of Ed who's here tonight, our teachers unions, our city councilman who's also here tonight, and was chaired by three people who weren't part of any of those groups, but really cared about our kids, understood our city. And I see one of the chairs of that commission, Hector Rivera, who runs our piece of the pie here tonight as well. And it was really important to me to have somebody who was involved in Opportunity Youth outside of the school system as part of those conversations, because to me it's a continuum of care. It is the moment that child enters the school system, and then the moment they leave. And you know, the other thing we did this summer that was a partnership between the city and the school system to address opportunity youth that has been working really well, is we open night gyms in the city. And within the first week of opening gyms from 4 to 8 p.m. in 6 different neighborhoods around the city, we had over 1,000 kids sign up, which to me is an indication that there is such a need to be engaged and involved from our young people. There's such a desire, thirst to be engaged and involved, and yet our systems are failing our young people when it comes to options to do so. And these night gyms are an entry point in which we are connecting them with services. We are involving our violence prevention organizations, and our Office of Violence Prevention is deeply involved in those efforts. Our newly created Sports and Recreation Department is working with them, as well as our Department of Children, Family, and Youth. But both when we talk about the solutions to education and when we talk about the solutions to youth engagement, the key tenet from the City of Hartford has been that we need everybody around the table involved in the same conversations. And that is the core of this 119 Commission, 119K Commission, and the core of this work here, that it is not the people behind this podium, but all of the people in a community that involve and touch a child's life, all of the people in our community that determine what the course of a city looks like, determine what the course of our state looks like, that need to be involved in that conversation. If we don't work together, it's impossible for this work to be successful. So I thank you guys for coming to the City of Hartford. I thank all of you who showed up to give your thoughts and to be a part of this conversation that is so important for all of our communities. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. When I came in this evening, I first ran into the mayor. I said, Mayor, you know us more robust guys don't do well without central air conditioning. And he said to me, well, I actually had it in the budget for this year, but I was going to have to eliminate the CCM dues to pay for it. So I took off my jacket and said I would enjoy this beautiful space. We'd be just fine. So we just want to kick off sharing a little bit about the context of the 119K Commission, and in particular, talk a little bit about our process, because I think it's important. We do this at the start of every meeting, but it's important that people understand, both those of you who are here in the audience, but also for those folks watching at home, how they can engage with us and what the inputs are to our strategy, so people know, that this is work that is being done across various sectors with an opportunity for input from both people who just are experiencing these challenges, as well as those who are experts working in the various segments of the field that affect this population. So one of the things that we want to do is, at the end of this, we're going to publish an actionable multi-year strategy for Connecticut to get 60,000 young people back on track within 10 years. Now, that 60,000 number is no secret. If you look at almost 120,000 kids, that's reducing this population by half within 10 years. I think everybody on this panel recognizes that that is a difficult charge, but also one that we can accomplish by doing it together. And in terms of doing it together, I think that's the other point that you'll see on this slide that is so important, which is to complete a process that results in stakeholders organized to advance the strategy implementation. What that really means, you take the fancy wording out of it, although it's not that fancy, but what it says, there's a whole lot of people doing a lot of good work in this space, but doing it in a vacuum. And we want to make sure that we build a strategy that brings all of those people together and has them sort of in the same boat, all rowing in the same direction. We think that in many cases, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. In many cases, we have to bring things to scale and bring good people together and good organizations together that are doing this work and find a way that they can work together and feed off of each other, putting these young people at the center of that work to make sure that all of their needs are met. So how do we get there? And I think that's, we're getting there. Tonight is part of the process, part of one of those strategy inputs of how we get there. But there are really 8 strategy development processes that this commission has been involved in over the last several months and will continue to be involved in for the next few months before we produce a report. The first one is what we're doing here this evening. It's regional public forums across the state with invited panelists who focus on a driver of this population, because there are multiple drivers, so we focus on individual drivers for those invited panelists. But when those invited panelists are finished, we invite the public to come and speak about anything that they want. So I always like to point that out, that don't think because you hear a conversation about this population tonight that is focused with a specific driver, that doesn't limit those of you who want to come up and testify or share your thoughts or ideas to being to that driver. We want to hear from you on all of the areas that impact your communities, impact your families, and certainly impact this work. We are conducting discussions where we're going straight to the impacted population. We've done 2 of those already, predominantly, although not exclusively, but predominantly with at-risk youth, younger people who are in danger of not graduating or not graduating on time, or right on the edge of perhaps, becoming more disconnected or severely disconnected. But we're going to continue to hold those roundtable discussions where we're going to meet with folks who are severely disconnected, some of which are incarcerated, and understand their experiences and what got them to this point, and more importantly, what could have been done differently to keep it from getting to that point. So we're really going straight to the populations that we're trying to impact and hearing directly from them. We're receiving a great deal of testimony through the website, the 119kcommission.org, and I would encourage folks that maybe aren't comfortable getting up and speaking, or maybe the time allotted that we have is just not enough time, to engage with us and submit your testimony through the 119kcommission.org website. We've taken in probably 30 to 40 pieces of testimony, very well written, by the way, testimony to this point, and looking forward to continuing to receive that written testimony from folks all across the state. We're doing local forums hosted by the commissioners. These are regional forums, more public facing, but a lot of our individual commissioners are hosting forums right in their own communities, bringing in the different providers or populations that they know exist within the community and hearing them directly. So they may not be quite to the scale that these regional forums are, but they're a very intimate type of setting that we're able to hear from people right in their own backyards. We're conducting commissioner interviews. Now, what does that mean and why? If you're on the commission, why do you need to be interviewed? Well, what we realize is the commissioners that are here tonight and some that can't be with us this evening, we can all hear the same presentations but take back something different from it. So our consultant, the Boston Consulting Group, is actually taking individual time with each commissioner to hear their thoughts, their input, and their feedback. So it's not just being done as a collective within the group, but we're giving them the opportunity to share their own individual personal reflections that helps frame this report. Connecticut stakeholder briefings. It's very important that we speak with stakeholders from all across the state, those who are going to be directly involved in implementing this strategy and making sure it works long after this report has been put forward and long after this commission's work is done. We've listened to national expert briefings. Very, very valuable information. What's interesting is there are areas in the country where there are people who are doing really good things, really good work is being done, but no one has really taken this on at the level that this commission has. So we are hearing those success stories in those different segments across the country and drawing from their expertise. And then we're doing Connecticut research, which is so very important. That Connecticut research is hearing from people right here in the state who have been working in various aspects in this space and getting research briefings from them. We've done it with the State School Finance Project, who has really done incredible work in understanding how we finance and fund public education. We've hosted briefings with the Boston Consulting Group, our own consultant, because in the incredible work that they did with Dalio Education that put out the report that identified this population, they also learned quite a bit about this population that wasn't necessarily in that report, that is able to continue to help shape our findings and our conversations going forward. And we've worked with the communities, with community science and others. So Those are the inputs to our strategy that we've done over these last several months and are going to continue to do, because we think that it's important that everybody is involved in getting their information to this commission, because it's going to take everybody involved to implement the strategy when it is put forward. So we want folks to have ownership. We want it to be for you. We want it to be for your communities. We want it to be for your hometowns. So at this time, I'm going to kick it back, I believe, is it going back to you, Andrew? I'm going to kick it back to our co-chair, Andrew Ferguson with Dalio Education, and we'll continue with the program.
Thanks, Joe. And it's wonderful to see both a full house here tonight, but also so many familiar faces, friends in the audience, folks who I know, whether on behalf of state boards, on behalf of community-based nonprofits, on behalf of school systems, are doing this work every single day. So the intent tonight is to learn not just from panelists, but also those that are here tonight to share their views through public comment. So very much looking forward to it. You know, for those who've been following carefully, tonight is the second meeting focused on public education. Public education, of course, being such an important topic to the broader crisis we have in this state of how we are not raising all of our young people well, how we're not caring and loving for all young people in the state. To the mayor's point, how we aren't effectively serving all young people in this state. When we look at the numbers, 56,000 of our high school students are at risk of not graduating on time. That's 1 in 3 of all high school students. A month ago, we focused a lot on what's happening within our comprehensive traditional high schools as it relates to chronic absenteeism, as it relates to engagement, as it relates to students experiencing, as they would say, boredom in some cases. We really focused in on what's happening within the context of high school and what are some of the underlying systems and structures, including school funding, that support high schools and public education in this state. Tonight is to build on that conversation. And so tonight we're going to focus on 2 panels. Each are organized around a specific question that relates to this population that we're describing. The first is, how can Connecticut help students prepare for post-secondary success in the workforce or higher education? The second is looking at alternative pathways. How can Connecticut provide effective alternative pathways for students, all pathways and supports that they need to be successful? So we hope that when folks look across both meetings on public education, that in context, comprehensively, they see that we've covered a lot of ground as it relates to learning about the needs of students through school. I want to touch on just briefly some of the fact base beneath this research. And so when we talk about this work, I want to make 2 points. One is, when we use terms like at risk and disconnected, we're not speaking about individual students themselves or anyone who shares or lives their lived experience. Rather, we're trying to be as clear as we can so that others who are beyond every corner of this state in Connecticut understand we're talking about the context in which young folks are being raised and supported in this state. And so if you are at risk, we're talking about what's happening in every single town in this state. Certainly some communities have higher needs than others, but we're talking about every single town. That's important to say, because when we look at students and their needs, we see often that there are high rates of transiency across not just high schools, but across town boundaries. And when students move across town boundaries, they are in some ways at heightened risk of losing connection to the relationships in the school environments that they most need to be successful while in school. So that's important. The other thing is important is to understand that within this population of students who are at risk, there are so many subgroups. And not just by subgroup, but by each individual, they all have unique needs. And so as one example, within the 56,000, there are about 2,000 students in Connecticut that attend alternative education programs. Tonight, by our second panel, we're going to focus heavily on alternative educations as part of a broader conversation about alternative pathways. It's important that we focus on this subgroup, because even though overall relative to 56,000, 2,000 is relatively small, the needs within this population are quite high. And the record of how we are serving this population is, to say the least, not strong. When we look at students over the course of time who've experienced alternative education, it's not a causal relationship, but it's a risk factor. You can see that they're 3 times more likely to end up disconnected. In fact, it's almost 70% of students who experience alternative education end up disconnected. That's speaking comprehensively across Connecticut. Tonight we'll hear from 2 program examples and 2 leaders in this space with ideas about what works in meeting the needs of students where they are, so that hopefully we can take these ideas and help share them and help consider ways to support and grow them. Second is, when students are still in school, that's when I think we all have a really strong ability to hopefully work better together to meet students where they are, help them get back on track, help them graduate, not just on time, but the skills to be successful in post-secondary education in the workforce. When we aren't able to do that well, students end up disconnected. Every year, about 10,000 students disconnect newly for the first time in Connecticut. This is something that certainly was accelerated during the pandemic, but it wasn't caused by the pandemic. Predating the pandemic to present, you see every year about 60 to 70,000 young adults between the age of 14 to 26 who experience disconnection from school or work in Connecticut. That's been relatively consistent. We have an opportunity to do something about that. Here again, it's not to treat everyone the same. In other words, there are a lot of subgroups within students who are experiencing, young people I should say, who are experiencing disconnection. And it's to understand not just where they are, but also as individuals, what do they need to be successful. Tonight we're going to talk specifically about a group of 44,000 who have high school degrees or beyond, but aren't currently connected to the workforce. Our first panel is 2 experts who are teed up to speak specifically to what we're seeing across our system, by which too few young people are actually connecting to and thriving through post-secondary education in general. Along the way, whether it's the transition from high school to post-secondary education, whether it's the completion of post-secondary education, whether it's the transition to workforce, we're losing too many young people because our systems have an opportunity to become better to meet the needs where they are. And we'll start tonight by listening to President John Maduco. He's the president of the Connecticut State Community College System, and Melanie Thomas from Meriden Public Schools. Melanie's the director of school counseling at Maloney High School, one of 2 comprehensive high schools in Meriden Public Schools. The overarching question that John and Melanie will speak to is how can Connecticut help students prepare for post-secondary success in the workforce or higher education? They'll each spend a few minutes offering some opening views from their expertise, and then we'll open it to a discussion with the commission based on any questions that commissioners have of them. Without further ado, if I may, President Maduco, I'll turn to you to kick us off.
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, Mayor Carbone, Chair Brown, Mr. Mayor, yourself here in Hartford, and obviously members of this esteemed commission. John Maduco, President, Connecticut State Community College. So, have my clicker here. Let's get straight to it. So I want to speak to obviously why we're here, and obviously it's the disconnected youth. And I believe not just here in Connecticut, but community colleges have a special place in the higher education sector as it pertains to serving underrepresented but also low-wealth communities. Right, so as CT State Community College, as we're known, we are the largest institution of higher education in the state of Connecticut. So we serve 25% of all undergraduate students in our great state, right? So that's really important. 2, we are a minority serving institution where north of 50% of our student populations are students of color or BIPOC, right? So when you're looking at the 119K data and what stands out to you is race, and I think we have to talk about that. We cannot take a colorblind approach to this. We have to look through an equity lens. So really answering the question, right, you know, our big tagline is not only are we the largest institution in the state of Connecticut, we have 22 locations. We're in every corner, so there's access, because the comment that was made is when a disconnected youth moves, their circumstances change, right? And we have to think about that. But also, we're the most affordable. We're the most affordable college in the state of Connecticut, hands down. We benefit from our free tuition program per Governor Lamont's administration and the Great General Assembly. And last year alone, 52% of all of our students attended our institution without paying a nickel as it pertains to tuition and fees. Because we know often that with a disconnected community and people trying to climb that ladder and better themselves, they have to choose between life and their education. We remove that barrier. right? So we really hang our hat on equitable outreach and support, right? So we have bilingual recruitment because, again, you have to add a colorblind lens to this work, right? So our marketing materials, our engagements are in Spanish and in English, right? We have statewide FAFSA workshops, so financial aid, right? The less money you have is the increased probability that Uncle Sam will provide a Pell Grant to go towards your education. But typically, applying for the FAFSA application is very intimidating and challenging, so we provide FAFSA workshops across the state, right? We have free English and math boot camps for underskilled universities. Again, that equity lens. Bilingual households. Often, it's just language is the barrier to even apply for resources, have it be for social needs or education, right? We have American Job Centers on our campuses in partnership with the Department of Labor, right? And we are in every urban center in the state of Connecticut. And we're proud about that because we're in those communities where we see our disconnected youth. I mentioned, obviously, 52% of our student body pays $0 in tuition and fees. We have 12 campus-based foundations that provide both merit and scholarship-based support. Your carburetor car's broken down, you need repairs, right? Your food insecure, right? Our foundations contribute to that, right? So I'm sharing all of this in terms of higher education. We have to meet students where they are. We survey our students in the beginning of their educational academic experience with us, where they tell us 70% of them are employed, 40% of them are caretakers to someone, a child, a parent, a loved one. That's really important. So when we're talking about access to education, right, we have to speak to addressing those needs in the front end. And then lastly, we have holistic advising, where from day one, we have advisors assigned to our students to get them through their academic journey, right? At CT State Community College, we are committed to not only access in higher education, but also those specialized populations, right? So we have a Second Chance Pell Program, right? We have a litany of justice-involved individuals in the state of Connecticut. So we operate and educate and teach and instruct in 9 out of the 11 prison facilities in the state of Connecticut, like on-site, because we recognize that we don't want you to go back, so let's provide you those skills that you need, right? We have 500 plus Second Chance Pell students enrolled annually. That's a big deal, right? 6 of our campuses are working with 15 alternative schools. I know that's going to be a topic worked on later on today because we recognize there are different challenges for our folks. 364 of those individuals, right? We've helped them reach their high school equivalency, provide them free tuition, and of those individuals, 57% of them are BIPOC, right? And then last but not least, earlier in this year, we hosted low-income and at-risk youth at our campuses across the state in partnership with Mrs. Marissa Perez Cardona, right? Recognizing that let's bring these individuals and their parents in the bilingual delivery format to introduce education, higher education to them. And then lastly, in terms of how do we bridge that gap with disconnected youth while they are in high school, right? CT State Community College, we're second only to UConn as it pertains to providing dual enrollment, or basically college programming, to high school students, right? So we serve north of 6,000 students a year. So why dual enrollment? High school students that enroll in dual enrollment, basically they're taking a college course that counts towards both high school credit and college credit, more apt to graduate. That's a huge issue with the disconnected youth. More apt to matriculate to college, a huge issue here, right? But also too, we get these individuals in the workforce pipelines. So a recommendation and also the ask that we're working with the State Department of Education, we're working with other groups is, Connecticut is the only state in New England that does not have a funded dual enrollment infrastructure, right? So you look at Texas, you look at Minnesota, red or blue states, dual enrollment's exploding. More and more students are getting college credits under their belt to benefit from the many benefits that I mentioned earlier. Despite it not being non-funded, we subsidize it greatly, right? We have a litany of programs across the state. We have Gateway to College at our Gateway campus in New Haven, right? We collaborate with Achieve Hartford, right, to address the very needs that the mayor was speaking to earlier. We're launching a Let's Get Ready mentorship program that we are going to establish a peer mentorship type of infrastructure to address our students across our system, right? To get to 10 to 15,000 students within 5 years. And last but not least, we work with all of the regional workforce boards, right? We work with the majority of community foundations because we're the #1 leader in workforce development education in the state of Connecticut, hands down. And we recognize not only getting them trained and getting them educated, and I respect the report that's in here, but if our students and these disconnected youths don't achieve family-sustaining wages, then what are we doing for them? Right, so we have to leverage the ALICE threshold and the poverty line to say, any job that's out there that's below those levels, why on earth are we even offering to these individuals? Because they're not gonna break that cycle, right? So we are intentional in terms of our work, in terms of the people that we serve, but also meeting individuals where they are, right? And we have to adopt both an equity lens, but also an anti-racist framework, right? Because again, per Governor Lamont's administration, the study that his administration did, I believe in December, Connecticut is one of the most segregated states in the United States. Not a red state, not some of the states that make the headlines. Connecticut is one of the most segregated states in our country. And we know that there are 2 Connecticut's. And based on where you fall into that, it dictates your livelihood. Mr. Mayor, I believe Jeffrey Flax of Hartford Healthcare, when you take life expectancy between those who live in the city of Hartford compared to West Hartford, I believe there's an 18 to 20-year difference or delta based on life expectancy. Primarily black and brown communities and low income, low wealth, and immigrant, right? So again, it's Connecticut State Community College. We are Connecticut's community college, right? We are for the people, we're the people's college. We know the work that we're doing, though not alone, is one of many, right, solutions that we have to augment and invest in and make sure it's accessible across the state. I thank you for your time.
Hello, everyone. Okay, I don't have fancy slides, but I do have index cards. So I'm gonna start off by saying that I'm very honored to be here. When I was approached to be a part of this panel, naturally I thought, why do they want to hear from me of all people? Because, you know, I'm just a little old black girl from New Haven, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that as I go forward. And it's a very important aspect of my story. And the more I thought about the question that was going to be posed tonight, the more nervous I got about speaking about it, because in my head, I'm like, am I an expert? Do I know what I'm talking about? Do they, you know, are they going to really hear what I have to say? And as I thought about the question, I thought, you know, I can come in with facts and stats and you know, talk all the jargon and, you know, approach it that way, but that's just not who I am. I pride myself on being a storyteller. I believe that my story is important and it connects to a lot of young people and the young people we are talking about this evening. So I am gonna approach it from more of a storytelling angle. I'm gonna tell a little bit of my own story through my personal upbringing and as well as my professional experience as the director of school counseling at Maloney. So just to reintroduce myself, my name is Melanie Thomas, and I am the Director of School Counseling at Maloney High School in Meriden. Go Spartans. And Meriden, as shown in the report, is one of the areas of the state that outlined 30 to 40% disconnected youth. On top of working in one of those higher need areas, in my opinion, I'm also from one of the higher need areas of the state. I'm from New Haven, Connecticut. Also one of the areas with 30 to 40% of disconnected youth. And I'm gonna speak to this issue that we're facing and hopefully propose some solutions by talking first about my upbringing, like I mentioned, and then I'm gonna segue into my professional experience, and then from those two angles, I'm gonna propose a couple solutions, which I was delighted to see align with what was in the report that I just read last night. Um, and it, it really kind of brought home the fact that, you know what, maybe I do have something of value to bring here. So I'm gonna start with my upbringing. And that's a major contributing factor to why I'm sitting in this seat today. When I read the report, the portions that I identified most with were the individual student stories. What did they call them? There was a nice little way that they put it in the story. It was like they had a little title, but they were the individual student voices that I connected with primarily. So just to summarize those experiences, there was a young lady who never returned to school after COVID. There was a young man who, after attending school in Greenwich, which I thought was eye-opening, made it to college, but eventually fell onto hard times and drugs due to the lack of impactful mentorship earlier on in his life after an athletic setback. There was a young man who faced racism and discrimination at a predominantly white school, and he carried that with him for years after graduating, and needless to say, ran into some roadblocks as a result of that, because you just don't get over those experiences. And then finally, there was a young lady who ended up graduating and attending college, all thanks to a community mentor outside of school who helped her develop self-advocacy skills while in high school. So I see myself in these young people. In fact, I was one of these young people in a sense, if you really want to break it down. I could have been a disconnected youth or young person. I started high school with a number of the risk factors associated with becoming disconnected. We were a low-income family. We got state assistance. I had an absent biological parent. I had an incarcerated parent for the majority of my high school years. And somehow, I made it, right? Or it looks like I made it. I think I made it, right? And that was roughly 20 years ago. I can't believe I'm saying that right now. And I was listening to one of the speakers on one of the previous panels, and she had mentioned how her experience in school is a lot different than what schools are today. And I agree and disagree with that, because I don't think a lot has changed in schools in the last 20 years. What has changed, though, is the adult experience in school, so the educators, their experience, in my belief, has changed because, and I'm gonna say we because I am one of those adults now, we're asked to do more with either less or the same amount that we had 20 years ago, right? And for the students, I don't think the student experience has changed that much either over the past 20 years. The one thing that changed for students, or one of the major things I will say, one of the major things that have changed for students over the past 20 years is their access to technology. And I'm gonna talk a little bit more about this later, but our systems cannot keep up with the rate of speed that the technology boom is happening. So those are the major two things, and that's a big change for kids. It's one thing, but it's a big change that impacts many things. So in my experience growing up in the New Haven public schools system, I believe there were three major factors that led me to become a first-generation college student and ultimately leading me to sit on this panel. So I'm gonna list them. So the first thing, no matter how broken my home was, and it was broken, my parents understood the value and power of education. everything we did as children connected to learning and aspiring to be and do better than our current circumstances and surroundings. The second thing that I think made to this, to my success, is that I attended a small magnet high school in New Haven. And when I say small, I mean my graduating class was 60 kids, 60 kids. And every time I say that to someone, they're like, what? That's really, really small. And I'm thankful for that. And due to that small environment, I felt that my teachers and my school counselor were able to connect with me and that they genuinely cared about me. And that's not to say that educators in larger systems don't care about their students and don't connect, but when the ratios are smaller, more impactful relationships happen. And I'm a testament to that. The third thing is that I had a school counselor who looked like me. My school counselor was a black man and one of very few black educators in that building. And shockingly, I find myself in spaces where I'm still the youngest and the blackest in the room. And that's a problem, right? Because it shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't be in environments where I'm one of so many black educators in a space where over 50% of the students are students of color. And I know that's a bigger issue than what, we're here to talk about today. But that representation matters, and needless to say, his impact led me to become a school counselor. Like, I owe it to his, just his care and investment in my success. So later on, in a few minutes, I'm going to propose some ideas that connect to that experience growing up in those three major contributing factors. But I'm first gonna spin it and talk about my experience as an educator. So I've been a school counselor for 11 years. I started my journey as an intern in East Hartford Public Schools at East Hartford High School. Then I spent 8 years working in Manchester at Manchester High School as a school counselor there, loved it. And then I transitioned to leadership, where I spent 2 years as the school counseling department supervisor in West Hartford Public Schools at both of the large high schools there. And then now I am the director of school counseling at Maloney High School in Meriden. So over the 11 years, the past 3 years have been in leadership for me. So I'm still a very new leader. And I do think it's important to kind of mention that. So over time, I've had the opportunity to work with amazing educators, and they all work hard to aid in the success of all students, and I say all with all caps. As was mentioned earlier, we cannot talk about this without talking about race and equity. So I'm proud to have worked with educators who put that at the forefront of every decision made in the system. Two of the districts that I've worked in partnered with the RISE Network, and I know you had a representative from the RISE Network on the last panel, and those districts were Manchester and my current district, Meriden. And the RISE Network, I think, is a very important piece of the work that I do as a school counseling director. And the primary buckets of work that I've had experience in are 9th grade's transition support, so supporting students from 8th to 9th grade, and then transitioning to 10th grade successfully. And then the major area of my work is post-secondary planning. And in my experience with the post-secondary planning work, the structured and strategic focus on specific milestones are what make a school counseling department and a school as a whole successful at setting students up for success after high school. However, with that said, even with these systems in place and partnerships in place, there are several factors that impede the progress for many students who eventually become disconnected. And I've narrowed them down to what I believe to be three major buckets, okay? So the first area or bucket, as we're talking about, is the lack of engagement and connection to school. And this is due to a variety of factors that are of no fault to these students. Like, I do want to say it's not their fault, and quite frankly, high school is a little too late to start tackling the issue. By the time students reach high school, a lot of times it is too late. And that is something I battle with every day. But this lack of engagement and connection to school, due to a variety of factors, including but not limited to their parents who may not understand or have the capacity to be invested in their child's education, which is at no fault of theirs. They have their lives to handle. They got to put food on the table, like my parents back in the day. Luckily, they were invested, right? I still have letters from my dad coming from jail, writing to me saying, make sure you get those A's. Don't come home with a C in math. Like, I was scared. Like, my parents instilled, I don't want to say fear because that's not the best word to use, but they instilled that school is important and school is going to take you far. So you need to be serious about your education. Sometimes these students need to focus on more important than what they perceive to be more important and pressing things, like helping to provide for their families, whether that's financially or otherwise. Maybe they need to watch children or, so on and so forth. Mental health needs that are crippling, like anxiety and depression. And then, as I mentioned earlier, inappropriate access and use of technology, whether that's through gaming, social media, you name it. Technology has a huge impact, in my opinion. And I'll take that further and say that the school structures have not adapted to the short attention span that these students have in this generation, because they need that instant gratification, right? And I don't think our systems have adapted to that. I think we're working on it, but it's just moving so fast. The second bucket is, and I think this is probably one of the major ones that I think is kind of low-hanging fruit. There is limited training on careers outside of the 2 to 4 year college pathway for both staff and students. There's a huge focus on having students, and I don't think there's anything wrong with this, but we have to be real with ourselves. There are students who are not going to go to 2 or 4 year colleges, and they may enter the workforce. And it's our duty to be educated on those pathways, and we're not. I'm a director. I cannot tell you how to become a welder. And I feel like I should know. Like, if I had a student come up to me and ask me, Ms. Thomas, what do I need to do to become an electrician? I don't know, but I can pick up the phone and call someone, but I want to be able to tell them step by step, just in the same way that I'm able to tell them step by step what they need to do to attend a college. I could tell you that process with my eyes closed. Other pathways, I can't say the same. And we know that there are post-secondary options beyond 2 and 4 year colleges. And the bucket of students, or the population we're talking about, are probably students who would benefit from those alternative pathways. The third bucket is, and I mentioned it earlier by talking about my high school experience, is the student to staff ratios. And I know this came up in a previous meeting as well. No matter how you slice it, the neediest students are falling through the cracks because educators are spread too thin. As much as we want, and I'm speaking about myself here, as much as I want to help every single kid, and I try my very best to help every single kid. But during AP season, guess what I'm doing? Packing up boxes to send to the College Board, and I'm not seeing the student who needs my help, whether it's through, mental health needs, or they have a deadline, and I hate having to push the student off, right? But those are competing demands that are also part of my job. And I can only imagine how a school counselor might feel, a teacher, principals. I couldn't imagine being a principal. I don't even want to get into that. But we want to support every single student with 100% effort and focus. And like I said, we don't have the capacity due to the competing demands professionally and personally. A lot of times I tell people the only reason I'm able to do my job as well as I do it is because I don't have a family. I have a dog. That's it. My dog can wait. I don't have a kid at home saying, "Mommy, mommy, I need this, I need that." I'm able to dedicate more to work than many people who have those competing demands. So in closing, and I apologize if I went over time, I thought this was going to be succinct, but clearly it's not. I'm going to suggest areas of work to consider in order to achieve the goals of the 119K Commission based on my personal and professional experience. One of the major things I believe we struggle with in Meriden, and I know it for a fact because I've seen it over the past year, is our parent involvement of the students that we're trying to reach. We need to increase and revamp, get creative about parent outreach and education about post-secondary pathways, and as Dr. Maduko said, in multiple languages, right? Because we have a large Spanish-speaking population in Meriden. So I can only imagine, I don't know what the statistics say, but I wonder what the multilingual learner percentages are in the disconnected youth percentages. They face many, many barriers, and their parents too, because they, maybe they're new to the country, or maybe they just don't have the language skills to feel comfortable coming into the school buildings. We need to find out how to connect with them and present information in ways that all parents can understand and access, as well as their students. The second piece is to enhance and develop more training and partnerships that provide insight and connection to non-college degree pathways. So talking about trades, military, workforce, you name it. The third is to develop and enhance programs and structures that adequately meet the needs of today's technologically advanced students. We may not be able to reduce class sizes, but what can we do with what we have? The fourth thing is to increase the number of mental health professionals in schools at all levels. And I know that costs money, but we need it. We have one school social worker at Maloney for 1,400 kids, roughly. One. I don't think I need to say anything else about that. We need more. We need more. And then the last thing is to enhance recruitment and retaining efforts for staff of color in not only the more diversely populated schools, for all of them. Representation is important, not just for Black and brown kids. It's important for everybody else too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. President Maduko, if I may come back to you, the point you made about Connecticut lacking the dual enrollment infrastructure that's necessary for this population, could you say a bit more about what would be ideally the infrastructure in dual enrollment?
Yeah, so in other states that I've served in a similar administrative capacity, so I have to be in Minnesota, the K-12 system, the Department of Education in Minnesota, they basically receive the funding, and then therefore they can partner with individual colleges to provide the dual enrollment experiences, and we don't have that in Connecticut right now. In Texas, it comes locally from local taxing districts, right? I think having that in place gives a leg up. Now we're being proactive in terms of we're expanding our eligibility, right? So we want more individuals to be eligible to benefit from dual enrollment, right? Versus closing doors on them. And then also too, ensuring that every dual enrollment student can benefit from the college services. So on our campuses, we have a mental health counselor on the majority of our campuses. We have food pantries, we have holistic advising and wraparound support services that these high school students would also be able to benefit from, and therefore helping them in high school as well. So I think it takes a village, right? And we know that dual enrollment, we've seen the national data in terms of the increased success, retention, persistence, and ultimately, matriculation to colleges and universities.
Of you with such compelling presentations. Ms. Thomas, that was really an unbelievable story. Thank you for sharing it. And President Maduco, I'd like to commend you for the great work you're doing with these community colleges. In North Haven, Connecticut, where I'm the chief elected official, I had and I still do have a long-standing relationship with Gateway Community College. They were there in North Haven for many years and then relocated to New Haven. But it was when I first took office about 15 years ago that I really saw the link between education and the workforce. Because on the North Haven campus, they had a automobile training school. And for the first 3 years I was in office, I would go there, give speeches, and we worked hard with Gateway to link those students to go into these car dealerships, which today, ladies and gentlemen, those jobs pay well over $100,000 a year. They're technology jobs. So you've done a great job on that. I noticed on one of your slides you had the American Job Center as a resource. Can I ask you, sir, what happens with the American Job Center and what resources do they provide for your students?
Yeah, and thank you for for your kind words. And we're still in North Haven, so we still provide automotive technology, and we do great work there. In terms of American Job Center, so kudos to Commissioner Bartolomeo in terms of her initiative and leadership. But the American Job Centers are not only available to our students on our campuses; they're open to the public, and you have everything from how to apply for a job, interviewing skills, how to create a resume, the LinkedIn, all of those kind of essential and soft skills that help an individual be more competitive and marketable as it pertains to applying for the job. Even with the skill set, right? Applying for the job, going to an employer to talk about yourself and tell your story is extremely intimidating, right? So career advising and career services is everything, right? That's the glue. That's the glue to give that individual the confidence to walk into any employer, share their competencies, share their value, their worth, and hopefully they're able to obtain, a family-sustaining career.
Can I continue? Thank you. So next month, we're going to be in New London with Mayor Passero in his town, and we're going to be talking about workforce development. So I wanted to ask you, sir, if what you just described can be enhanced by organizations around the state called Workforce Alliance. In the greater New Haven area, I'm chairman of the municipal board for Workforce Alliance. Now, they do many of the things that you just mentioned, but they seem to take it maybe a step further and bring individuals in and promote different sectors where they think they could fit. Would that be an enhancement, do you think, to the community colleges and to the American Job Centers?
All the above. I think also too with our K-12 partners to help to Ms. Thomas's comments, also help educate our educators and our high school counselors in terms of the litany of workforce-related opportunities out there, have to be conventional or unconventional, right? So it definitely takes a village. And again, we do great work in Eastern Connecticut in terms of the EWIB, and we're one of the leaders in manufacturing when it comes to General Dynamics. So the more the merrier, because I think the more inputs they're getting from all of us, right? Those are the rising tides that these disconnected youth need from all of us.
And I'll close by asking a rhetorical question. I often wonder, even as the chairman of our board in the greater New Haven area, if we're doing enough to create awareness of what is available through the various workforce alliances, and I believe there's 5 across the state of Connecticut. Perhaps we should be doing a better job in marketing ourselves in terms of what we should be doing. And I say that as North Haven's mayor, but also as the chairman of the Workforce Alliance. Thank you very much.
If I may, to Ms. Thomas, I'm writing a lot of notes as you're talking because you're hitting all of those things that I hear. My husband was a special education teacher. All three of my boys are educators themselves, and I do hear this often. My question to you is, do you think we're doing enough to provide students access to our technical high schools? I know in the city of Torrington, and the only technical high school that we have is actually a regional school, and those seats are in high demand, not enough seats for our students. And when I was growing up a lot of years ago, that was alternative education. Now, I think it's a highly valued and in demand.
I don't think the question is whether we're doing enough. I want to say we need to rethink the way that we provide these opportunities, because like you said, it's in very high demand, and as students become more privy to the fact that they don't want to be in a lot of college debt, and they start to seek opportunities where they can make money with less years of schooling, which I think makes sense. We need to think about how do we bring the aspects of technical high schools that are appealing to the traditional high school model. So, like, how do we embed that into, a Maloney High School, for example? How can we provide programs that achieve the same result and allow more access and more opportunities for students who want to get in those seats but may not be able to because of, the constraints?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that also what I've noticed over the years is those decisions, when you're going from 8th grade into 9th grade, and you're going into a high school because you're not sure you really want to go into a school that's going to teach you a trade. And then you're less than successful in 9th grade, 10th grade, and now all of a sudden those trade opportunities seem to be more attractive to you. I worry that we're not providing a pathway to change course at those, later times in high school career. And I don't know if our community colleges might be able to fill that gap. But I do wonder from your perspective as a counselor, if those opportunities are available, if that would be something that you could put in your toolbox.
I think that would be amazing. Like, in a perfect world, I view the transition from 8th to 9th grade as an exploratory period. One of the speakers, the representative from the RISE Network at the panel that I watched, talked about how important the 9th grade year is, and that's a lot of pressure. You're, 13, 14 years old in 9th grade, and that year defines the trajectory of pretty much your life. So why not make that an exploratory period? Students don't know what they don't know. And they definitely don't know what the adults don't tell them, because we don't know, right? So if we provide opportunities for them to explore and really identify what their interests are, because a lot of times it's not going to be found in the AP World History textbook. It's through experience and hands-on learning. And I do believe a lot of schools are moving in that direction, but if we can provide more, like you said, pathways and milestones to help students explore those opportunities and make more informed and confident decisions by the time they're moving towards the end of their high school career, that would be great.
So I want to thank both of you for being here. First off, I really enjoyed.
Joe, I think Mayor Passwords.
Yeah, I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was going to ask a question. Yeah,
No.
just giving them the thanks, but I will ask a question.
You're the big dog in the
No,
room.
no,
Go right
no,
ahead.
no. Listen, I just want to point out he called on me, so I would have never gone in front of you. So, Ms. Thomas, first of all, number one, you don't need to ask the question. You have made it. So congratulations to you for making it, number one. I wanted to ask you, when we were doing these youth roundtable discussions, and two of them in two significantly different parts of the state, One of the questions that we asked at-risk young folks at the tables, at least the tables I was sitting at both tables, where they went for information in school, or where they went for information for their post-secondary or their career path, that type of thing. And it was striking to me, at least with the groups that I sat with at 2 different schools, that the answer that was consistently given was Google. None of them named people within their family. Actually, I take that back. One did. One named an uncle. And at one of the cities, when I asked the question, I asked a follow-up question, and I said, well, what about your school counselor? It's clear that you're very passionate and you're doing very good work. No question there. But the answer that I received from at least those young people was almost an answer of shock, and it was like, well, no, never. Like it wasn't even a thought to them to do that. So I guess my question to you in the profession, are we doing enough to take Muhammad to the mountain, or are we waiting for the mountain to come to Muhammad? And is part of that because you're so bogged down with, as you talked about, the other responsibilities within your work? So I'm just curious as to your thoughts on that.
I think we try our very best, and I will say I am not surprised by that answer at all. Every time I attend a graduation, which I've attended many at this point in my career, school counselors are never mentioned in any speeches. They're never thanked. I'm saying they're like I'm not one of them. I am one of them. It's a thankless profession, and I don't think the structures allow us to do our jobs in the way that the job is intended. Schools have changed so much, and the workload becomes more and more and more and more. Like if I could have it my way, I would never coordinate an SAT or AP exam ever again, right? But that's part of my job, and it's a huge part of my job. For the school counselors on my team, they're amazing. And I also know that they have huge caseloads. You can only do so much, right? And that speaks to that, that relationship building in that small high school that I was in. We had 350 kids in that high school, 2 school counselors, and I was lucky enough to have the one that I could identify with, right? What are the chances of that happening for other kids in this state, right? The chances are small. And our students these days, they don't know how to build relationships with adults. They know how to build a relationship with this. So it doesn't surprise me that they said Google. I'm surprised they didn't say TikTok or whatever. I don't even know what the new social media apps are now, but something's got to change, and I don't know. Like that's why I'm like, you guys are asking me for the answers. I don't know. Like I really don't know what to even say to that.
I just think as a member of this commission, for me, I sit in this room and I look at you, someone who clearly identified that one of the reasons why you made it was someone who looked like you and was accessible to you and helped give you the resources and the support that you needed, which you're never going to get from this. I think it's been well documented. We have a young man sitting up here on this panel that identifies his successes, that he was part of this population, and it was a person, it was a counselor, it was someone who got a hold of him and didn't allow him to fail. And so I just think that as we talk about this work, that it's important that we recognize that human connection. And what we're hearing, or at least what I'm hearing when we go out to reach these young people, is there are so many of them that human connection does not exist. So I appreciate you bringing that forward.
And I also, I'm sorry if I can add, I don't mean to generalize, because I know this is not all kids, right? Like there are some kids who do know how to, build relationships and things like that. But there's a large part of our population who struggle.
That's fine, thank you. I think Josh is waiting too, so I'll be brief. But first I want to say thank you to both of you for your testimony. I'm old enough to remember shop classes in high school. I don't know when they went away. I remember I used to substitute, and I'd always inevitably get to substitute the shop class, which was the hardest class to control the kids in. But I don't know when they went away, but I'm not sure that was such a good thing. And I almost wish for New London that our high school still had those programs. But we do have a regional tech high school. But my question is more about parent involvement. And certainly from your life experience, I just wonder if you could elaborate a little more on when a child doesn't have that family behind them, and there is no opportunity for parent involvement for any number of reasons you can imagine. That's a difficult one. And in New London, when we lose a child, inevitably there isn't a family behind them. We also have over 300 children in our school system that are homeless. That doesn't mean that they don't have parents involved. The whole family unit may be homeless, but they may be literally on their own as well. So I think that's a real impediment, and I wonder if you could expand a little on, if you have any ideas on that.
The answer lies in building a village, right? If a student is lacking that parental figure in their own experience, it's our job. I feel like it's an obligation for me as an educator to help build the village around that student. Like at that point, I become your mom, dad, aunt, grandma. Like I'm gonna hold your hand and make sure you. And I understand you can't, like every student doesn't make it, and I hate to like word it that way, but it can't be because we didn't try to, right? We need to exhaust all the efforts, right? And that's why I'm passionate about building my team so that they can identify who those students are. And that's where data systems come into play, like constantly looking at data, looking at trends, looking at patterns. Like, what are you noticing about this kid? Okay, let's dig a little deeper. Let's do a home visit. Let's find out what's going on with this student and then fill in the gaps where they need. The worst thing we can do for a student is assume, right? We gotta come in knowing what they need and hopefully kind of build the bridge and fill in the gaps where they need it, so that if they do, let's say the student chooses to, exit high school for some reason before graduation, it can't be because we just gave up on them and said, oh, well, they don't have any parents, they don't have anybody that cares, you don't care, I don't care. We cannot take that approach. So to answer your question, I think the solution is to kind of, help build the village, and that's by finding out and identifying what that specific student's needs are.
If I can, I don't want to take up too much time, but it seems to me that there's sometimes a lack of connection between the school system and the community organizations getting not the word out, but reaching beyond the school system, your staff, educators, and reaching into the community for resources there. I'm not sure if that's unique to my city or if it's a systemic problem all over. So let's just say you fail. We all fail. And that child is out of the system. You've lost him, so to speak. Mm-hmm. Him or her. Is there a way that we could connect more with the community, work together better? I mean, especially in a city like New London, we shouldn't lose anybody.
Right.
We shouldn't lose any child.
Right.
But it's all communication, and it happens.
Absolutely. I think yeah, what you're saying is those community partnerships and the knowledge about what exists in those communities, right? So educating the staff about, you know, what are the resources, let's say in Meriden, for example, for a student who's struggling with homelessness, or parents need English language learning skills, or, maybe there's a kid in the house with a disability. Who do we point to in the community for that, right? And the more information we're able to provide, and maybe provide opportunities in one space for all those things to come together, so parents can either come to the school, or I don't know, a virtual meeting. I don't know the solutions, because we struggle greatly with parent involvement in Meriden. And I do feel like Meriden is a resourceful community, and I believe a lot of towns in Connecticut are very resourceful. But it's, how do you bridge the gap between, okay, like, I'm a school professional and I know student is struggling with X. Here's a card with a phone number that you can meet, or let's bring so-and-so to my office and we can all have a meeting together. Those opportunities, I feel, are I don't want to say lacking, but it's a struggle for some reason, and I can't pinpoint why that is, because I know that in a lot of the schools that I've worked with, that the organizations and the connections and the resources, they're there. And like, sometimes I'm shocked. I'm like, how did you not know about this college fair we were having? We only promoted it 18 million times. How did you not know, right? And it's just frustrating, because we know that we're trying, at least, we're trying to tap into all the ways of communicating certain things and certain resources, but for some reason, like you said, there's that disconnect between, like, we think we're doing it right, and the parents and kids are like, oh, Google, like you mentioned earlier, right? I don't know what the disconnect is, I guess, is what I'm saying in so many words.
Thank you.
Quickly, couple things. So the first question I was gonna ask is what we were doing for those that are disconnected and disengaged, that are getting into our community college. And I will like to tell you, sir, I was impressed. When I graduated from an alternative school too, and Mayor Carbone can attest to what I'm saying right now. I have my transcript next to me where it can tell you it's 17 Fs and like 4 Ds on there. And until I got, with like Mrs. Maloney was saying, until I got with what we call a family advocate, you know, I can tell you after that, that's how I start getting the B's and the A's while I was in an alternative school. So one, I wanted to tell you, I was really blown away about what y'all doing at the J.R. Manson Youth, especially the 500 second chance. I was also one of those that was second chance. I was in juvenile detention center. You know, I was kicked out of the same public schools that are on my transcript. You know, I was battling homelessness through high school. I don't want it to be a broken record, but it is what it is. And when you're saying that help that you need, I think it's important to stress the need that, yes, as counselors, you need help, and sometimes you need those outside organizations, those community organizations that can come in and not just address the child need, but the whole family. Because if you don't just address the whole family need, the child's not going to probably make it through high school, you know. By the grace of God and good support and help, I was able to make it through. I was able to go to community college for 1 year, but then I wound up making it in banking. You know, there was nobody, though, at the time to tell me in the college, hey, maybe you should go pursue a job as a teller and then probably become a vice president. No, it was my family advocate. Like, I'm going to do these applications with you until the bank hires you. And then 10 years later, I'm running a few branches, and, you know, I'm not homeless no more, and I got, you know, some homes. So those things there, it was very important, I think, that you both addressed. And I'm really, really, and I'll say this again for the record, I'm blown away by what you're doing in the community state colleges with the disconnected and disengaged youth, especially those in the alternative school, getting to them at 9th grade instead of waiting until 10th or 11th, they're thrown out. So thank you. I just thank you. Really not a question, but a statement.
President Maduco, Ms. Thomas, thank you very much for being panelists and sharing your expertise with the commission today. At this point, we'll transition between panels. And so the next 4 panelists may come up as President Maduco and Ms. Thomas transition. Appreciate just how full the room is here tonight. You know, from my vantage, I see a few empty seats for those who still are looking for seats, so please, you know, feel welcome to take any seat that's available. The second panel for tonight. So the organizing question for this panel is to look at how can Connecticut provide students alternative pathways, alternative supports that they need to succeed. This includes both alternative education programs, but also more broadly, innovative strategies, different ideas for how to adjust school time, flexible hours, so many other ideas that I think we'll hear from the 3 invited panelists tonight. In no order, Gerard Dawes is from Our Piece of the Pie. He runs OPP Academy in collaboration with Hartford Public Schools. Ed Fergerow is the principal of Synergy, an alternative education program at East Hartford Public Schools. Najika Perla-Krishnan is the Chief Performance Officer of the Connecticut State Department of Education. Prior to that work, Ajit also has spent many years in adult education and different systems across Connecticut. So thank you all for being with us. And if I may, Gerard, I'll turn to you to kick us off.
I have a PowerPoint. Yeah, all right.
If your clicker doesn't work, I'll trade you.
All right, here we go. All right. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Gerard Dawes, and on behalf of Our Piece of the Pie, I would like to thank you for allowing me to share our alternative education model for overage, undercredited, disconnected youth. Opportunity Academy, also known as OA, is a small learning community dedicated to serving disconnected youth. Upon referral, students must participate in an interview that provides us with the appropriate information to create a strategic entry plan. Parental engagement is key. Parents, guardians, or either caring adults must attend an interview even if the student is over the age of 18. In our model, students are paired with a youth development specialist who sets goals with them, ensuring adequate pacing for credit accrual. The YDS works with students to reduce barriers, facilitate life skills, social and emotional supports, cognitive regulation, connection to clinical support, and paid learning opportunities. I have to figure out how to work this mic, so bear with me. We know building teacher-student relationships is vital in supporting disconnected youth. Throughout the school year, students join our community. They will participate in the orientation where each teacher leads an interactive activity geared towards building relationships. Students can accelerate credit accrual using Chromebooks to access our educational model 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our curriculum also allows for short pauses without loss of accrued progress. Smaller classrooms allow for blended learning, individual teacher support, as well as small groups. Teachers monitor students' progress real time to encourage steady pacing. Upon entry into OA, a vast majority of our students don't know how many credits they have. Many don't have plans for their future. Students complete a career interest inventory during orientation, which starts their post-secondary plan. Quarterly credit reviews and post-secondary plan updates are very important so students can visualize the path to graduation. These updates keep the focus on goals beyond high school. Students complete career readiness training, then explore their post-secondary options through paid internships. This experience helped them see how academics impact their future careers. Together, anchoring supports, innovative educational strategies, and future planning leads to success for students. Investing time in our students help the students envision their future motivates them to get better grades and graduate. Our results demonstrate the Opportunity Academy model works. The results of graduation are evident in significantly higher wages. High school graduates contribute more through taxes and need fewer government-funded supports. As students find success and move out of poverty, they help prepare the path for their children and families to gain economic independence. As you can see on this slide, alternative education models cost more money than provided by school districts. We would like to advocate for finding a way to have more money follow the student by changing the funding model to one that recognizes overage and undercredited students' unique needs and provides the supplemental funding to meet those needs. Let me share a story with you about one of our students. JP faced numerous barriers that led him to become chronically truant after attending several high schools that did not work for him. At the age of 18, JP joined Opportunity Academy, needing 10 credits to graduate. His YDS believed in him, and JP started to believe in himself, accepting the supports and persevering. After graduating, JP followed his post-secondary plan and enrolled in OPP's WIOA-funded manufacturing program at Asnuntuck Community College. And I am happy to share with you that JP received his certification and is currently working in manufacturing with a livable wage. Commissioners, we need your support in advocating for changing the funding model to one that recognizes overage and undercredited students' unique needs. So successes like JP's will begin to turn the tide, excuse me, will begin to turn the tide for 119,000 and counting, at risk and disconnected youth. Thank you.
All right. So good evening, esteemed Commissioner. I'd like to first start off by thanking you for inviting me here tonight to represent alternative education along with my colleagues who work to address the... Sorry, thank you. All right. I'd like to, again, thank you for having me here tonight to represent alternative education along with my colleagues who work to address their share of the 119,000 throughout the region and the state. I'd like to share a little bit about Synergy, what's worked for us, and our continued struggles that we wish to shed a bit of light on. Synergy Alternative High School has been in existence for just over 50 years, and throughout that time, we've been fortunate enough to graduate over 2,000 students, which, when we consider the fact that we started out with 3 educators and modules behind what was then Penny High School, is an absolutely amazing feat. Within its 50 years, Synergy has really been able to excel in prioritizing not just that academic support and not just credit attainment, but really prioritizing students' social-emotional development, rather, and their college and career readiness. I can speak to my experience working at Synergy starting 10 years ago as their school counselor, where we really sought to reevaluate and to revamp their programming to further align with the expectations that employers would have of their future employees. We wanted to make sure that students not only were able to secure employment, but were able to thrive and retain employment long term. So throughout that rebuild, we addressed college and career readiness on 3 fronts. We wanted to, 1, establish a career readiness inventory in which students were exposed to those expectations that employers would have of them. So we addressed areas such as attendance and punctuality, attitude and effort, communication and collaboration, time management, and presentation. Students on a period-by-period basis would receive feedback from their teachers on each of these areas, which then was a measure that we tracked throughout their time with us. For us, it wasn't just enough that we measured their career readiness, but we wanted to make sure that we supplemented that assessment with college and career curriculum. So essentially, our students participated in an advisory course 30 minutes every single day. It wasn't good enough for us just to do it once a week. So throughout that process, and one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we prioritized was their social emotional development. So that was something that we integrated, was social emotional lessons that students would participate in weekly that were aligned with our CASEL standards, and had access to our social workers, that they had access to our school-based health center. I think where we really began to gain traction was where we had an opportunity to have students participate in applied experiences. So really practice their skills in the college and internship settings. Those are 2 opportunities where prior to, I think many folks didn't think our students were worthy enough, right? They didn't think that they had a chance to be successful. So we began programming with our local community college, where students would earn college credit. And then we worked with our local elementary schools, where we had students visit twice a week to provide supports within the classrooms. And now I'm proud to say that we've had over 140 students earn college credit. Glad to say that we've had half a dozen students who are in turn working within our district supporting students, and many more on the horizon. I'll say that this programming very much resonated with our students, that allowed them to challenge themselves in areas that they didn't think possible. I could think of a few students, but namely Jordan. Jordan, who was a former honors student in the middle school, a student who came to us, was incredibly capable, but not working to their potential, struggled with attendance, chronically absent through grades 9 through 12, came to us at the beginning of midway through their senior year, but was able to develop relationships with our staff quickly, and those folks who in turn championed for him. He ultimately returned to us for a 5th year, participated in Student 5.0 college and career readiness workshops, worked with East Hartford Works, and earned a position with Raytheon Technologies manufacturing pre-apprenticeship program. Could say that Jordan has since completed that program. He has been working for Raytheon for just over a year now, and he is earning well over $30 an hour at just 20 years old, which is an amazing opportunity for him. I think since our programming has only grown, right? I think it's largely in part due to the relationships that we have with stakeholders in the community. We've had the support of organizations like Ready CT and Student 5.0, the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology, East Hartford Works, Capital Workforce Partners, of course, the CT State System, our friends over at the elementary level who were willing to take on our students as interns, Intercommunity, and East Hartford Youth Services. I think that really speaks to just the fact that it really does take a village, and then it takes folks willing to provide our students with a second chance. These folks really came to the table willing to support us, willing to support our students in dispelling the negative perception that alternative education students often have. So that being said, although we've gained some success, there are some changes that I think we wish we could see. Changes that I think can really help us further support our most at-risk and our disconnected students. For example, understanding that success for alternative education programs when compared to the larger comprehensive high schools may fall a little bit short. Therefore, it's important that we look at other accountability measures and that we expand further than SAT performance and AP performance and weigh FAFSA completion, post-secondary enrollment that includes enrollment in trade programs, in the military, and employment. I think it's important that if we consider these areas, if we consider growth and success in these areas, this will help change the culture within our buildings, but also the regard that we're held in as alternative programs. Additionally, for too long, alternative education has been the dumping ground and not seen as an opportunity where we can experiment and take chances to really further engage our students. Alternative education should be a setting in which we send our brightest, our best, our most courageous people, our most courageous educators, our folks who are willing to challenge themselves and pedagogy. I think it's a setting that educators shouldn't be sent to as a punishment, rather an incentive for them to work there. I think our neighbors to the north of us in Massachusetts have implemented a model utilizing empowerment zones in which they encourage folks to work in these schools to really transform some of their lowest performing programs. Also should be a setting in which we can allow teachers to innovate, where we utilize a lab model where success can then be replicated at the larger settings, at the larger comprehensive high schools. I also think that it would be beneficial to expand post-graduation support, so a model similar to Ready CT Student 5.0 program. Coming from a school counseling background, to know that there was such an opportunity for our students was incredibly refreshing and something that I know was an invaluable support for our students. I know often we think about expanding, our K through 12 model and including a 13th grade, if you will, their track students beyond graduation. I think this offers a sustainable model where we are not necessarily asked to do more with less. And then lastly, just flexibility with school hours, just to be inclusive of the complex situations that our students are in, to be considerate of folks who are employed or have familial obligations. I think it's important that, or many of our students rather, they're asked to support families financially. They're asked to serve as babysitters or serve as transportation for their siblings who are in elementary schools and often are penalized for being tardy to school. So therefore, I think we should really look at providing a bit of flexibility for that model to be inclusive of students in such situations. But in sum, I'd just like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss this much needed work for alternative education. As an educator for over 10 years who's worked in alternative education, who's worked in adult education, supporting out-of-school youth, I think there's a really great opportunity here where we can really start to tap into the potential of our students, really tapping into, just further supporting our at-risk and disconnected youth. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I'm the last panelist, so want to keep the energy up in this room. So again, thank you for the opportunity to speak here. My name is Ajit Gopalakrishnan. I'm the Chief Performance Officer, as Andrew mentioned. And Andrew, I remember our conversation, I don't know, was it like a year and a half ago, when we talked about this potential study through P20 WIN, and I'm thrilled that that work happened and we were able to get such a broad perspective of the challenges of the 14 through 26-year-old youth. And I'm really glad that in this perspective, we're looking at the full education spectrum, because obviously many of the students or individuals being discussed here are not in public school. They have left public school and they're in the community. So we're part of the solution, but we're not the only solution in K-12. So I think I'm glad that the full spectrum is being presented here. And before I get into the sort of the at-risk population, which is the about 56,000 students who are at risk in our high schools, I want to speak a little bit to the disconnected numbers and sort of point to some of the services that might be available, again, in this full spectrum of education. So among that 63,000 odd disconnected students, there are about 20,000 who don't have their high school diplomas. And these are census estimates, who don't have their high school diplomas. And I think the state's adult education system, I think, is a really viable and strong opportunity for many of these students to pursue their secondary credential. About 8,000 of these individuals are estimated to already be employed. So some type of incumbent worker integrated skills training that partners workforce employers with adult education programs, and I know many of these programs are already working in our adult education centers, that actually bring the education to the workplace, can actually help upskill those individuals, but also help them get secondary diplomas through adult education. There's another group of students, about 12,000, who are estimated to be severely disconnected. They're not working, they're disconnected, not in the labor force, et cetera, and adult education is an opportunity there as well, but that system does need resource. They're spending, I don't know, about $1,200, $1,500 an individual student in the program. So it's pretty low resource level, so that program definitely needs resources and support. When we look at the remaining roughly 44,000 students, I keep saying students, but individuals who are moderately disconnected, because those are individuals that have high school diplomas. And they're not just high school diploma holders. In fact, about 8,000 of them have college degrees. They have associates, bachelors, or or maybe even higher. But they're part of that 44,000 mix, but they're not currently employed or not in the labor force. So, and another 10,000 actually have enrolled in college, have touched college at some point or the other. And another 25,000 have high school diplomas, never touched college. So I think several of the programs that President Maduko was talking about, I think clearly can play a role here, as well as our workforce development programs and our WIOA programs, et cetera. So I think when we look at that disconnected population of about 63,000 individuals, adult education can play a part, as well as workforce training programs. So I think that's important to sort of keep that in mind, and it's important to sort of parse that population through. When we look at the 56,000 at-risk students in our high school, so I'm going to switch to that here. What we see actually when we look at those 56,000 students, obviously Andrew led off with this, with about 2,000 of them being in alternative programs, if you will, that are very specifically some of our highest need students, probably with the most multiple barriers served in some of the programs represented here. So clearly they're part of the mix, but clearly the remaining students are not in these alternative settings, but are in our regular high school programs. And you heard from the counselor before, Melaine in Meriden, the challenges and the opportunities that we need to give those students. We recently did a research that looked at the earnings of our high school graduates. And this data got a lot of press attention last month. We followed these students into college across the country, and then we looked at their wages for those who are working in Connecticut. And what we saw is that for those who had some type of college credential, didn't have to be a 4-year degree or even a 2-year degree. If they had some type of college credential, maybe a certificate from a college, their earnings trajectories were vastly different from those who had no college credential. There are a couple of exceptions to this, and I know CTEX was raised previously. And even in CTEX, this pattern holds true, except in certain industries, like manufacturing, like construction. People without a college credential had a decent earning potential long term. But if you were looking at a majority of the other industries, retail, healthcare, if you didn't have a college credential, your earnings trajectories were pretty low, long term. You weren't getting out of poverty. So I think that was kind of the base with which sort of, when we think about college, we don't think just about 4-year degrees. We think about college as certificates, workforce training programs, the whole gamut of opportunities which alternative programs like the ones featured here are preparing our students for. So I'll raise 3 sort of broad themes that I would sort of lay out in terms of what we need. Even regular high school programs like Maloney and Platt and high schools across, over 200 high schools across the state, as well as the several alternative programs that are across the state. I'll raise sort of 3 themes, and some of these were actually featured in the discussions already. Number 1 would be to keep students connected. And I know there was talk about like social media and the technology sort of really isolating our students, or the importance of connecting with like educators, seeing themselves in our educator workforce pool. So the state is invested in a few sort of initiatives that we're supporting our districts to do, one of which is increasing educator diversity. I know the senator was here recently talking about our investments in our Aspiring Educators Diversity Scholarship that actually gives funds up to $10,000 for students pursuing to become a teacher through our EdPrec program. So if they actually graduate high school from an alliance district and they pursue a teaching program, they can actually get $10,000 towards their tuition. So we have programs like that. We have teacher apprenticeship programs that are actually seeking to increase the diversity in our educator workforce pool. And we have made some strides in that area. In terms of keeping students connected, chronic absenteeism has been a huge issue in our state, and that's a huge part of where our students are becoming at risk. We have a evidence-based home visiting program called LEAP that is actually shown to increase student attendance by 10 to 15 percentage points 6 months after a visit. So I think, and that's being expanded with some of our recent investments, some from the state legislature as well. In terms of alternative programming, and I know Gerard talked about this and Edgardo talked about this too, in terms of flexibilities, please know that our state law already gives tons of flexibility in terms of not being tied to seat time. So it's no longer that you have to sit in class for 120 hours to earn a credit. You can earn credit through mastery-based approaches. You can earn credit through internship opportunities. You can earn credit by completing college-level coursework. Those flexibilities exist in law, including online learning. Those flexibilities are there, and several of our high schools are availing of those opportunities, but more needs to happen. I'll switch to, so the first theme I offered was keep students connected, so these are just some examples. The second theme I'll offer is to build bridges. And we've talked about, President Maduko talked about dual credit partnerships. The state actually has been, the State Department of Ed has been investing extensively in this. We have given $4 million through COVID relief funds to our districts. We've also given close to $4 million to our higher ed partners, including over $800,000 to CT State to expand dual credit opportunities for our students. And I couldn't agree more with the counselor from Maloney about AP, because it can't just be AP. AP is a viable opportunity, but can't be the only opportunity. Dual credit programs are a wonderful opportunity. They can be career-focused. They can be academic-focused. There are numerous examples in our state of partnerships that are being built. For example, Meriden and Clinton working with Goodwin on a manufacturing pathway. Ansonia working with University of Bridgeport on a athletic trainer certification, and on and on. And Torrington actually working with Ed Advance on a new partnership with the accelerator program down at Ed Advance. There are numerous of these programs, and we're funding several of these types of programs. And I couldn't also agree more with that. This work needs to start in middle school. That and we have guidance on this too, saying that these opportunities cannot be presented as being out of reach. They have to be shown as being possible for our students. FAFSA completion, we've been investing in that since 2019. You should also know that through a data partnership that we have with the Office of Higher Ed, we actually tell our high schools on a daily basis which student has completed the FAFSA and which student hasn't completed the FAFSA. We actually get data from the federal government through our Office of Higher Ed and to us, and then we send that down to our districts in a secure manner. So that data is available. We also give grants to about over 50 high schools, and I'm proud to say that Synergy was one of the FAFSA Challenge winners actually a couple of years ago for boosting FAFSA completion rates. Through our higher ed partners, Connecticut is one of the few states that offers free community college, free tuition. And the legislature recently made some changes that increased access to the program. More needs to be done when we think about that 44,000, especially those with high school diplomas who don't have college degrees. If we sort of broaden the rules for PACT, which is the free community college program, we could actually provide another avenue for upskilling. We also have an automatic admissions program for our 4 years, and on and on. The last theme I'll mention is supports and using targeted data. I know speakers previously talked about mental health supports. We have grants out there that are not enough, but they are there to actually increase the staffing capacity for mental health workers. We also have robust data systems in the state that actually tell our districts which of our students are predicted to not be on track in high school. You know, we don't have to wait to find out when students are overage and undercredited. We actually use data, we use our modeling, and we actually tell our districts which 7th and 8th graders we are predicting are gonna need more support to be on track when they get to 9th grade. So we have, I mean, I could go on for a long time on this whole thing, but so basically, you know, building partnerships, building bridges, keeping students connected, and offering supports and using the data, I think are sort of some of the big themes. These all overall connect to some of the sort of hints that you've all been throwing out, which is that we as an education system need to expand our sphere of influence. We can't just be offering a program and expect our students to come and succeed. We have to sort of go outside of our buildings, whether it be the regular high school or alternative programs, and really connect and build those bridges and partnerships and supports for our students. So I'll pause and turn it back to you, Andrew.
Thank you all three very, very much. I think you all have touched on at least one common theme around school accountability frameworks and both the existing policies that help support the work you're doing, but also suggestions about what more could be done to help strengthen the work you're doing, and in some ways help scale the work you're doing, because I know in each of the two programs represented here, you know, I think they're unique. They're unique because of the relationships the schools you represent each have with the districts that you collaborate with, and they aren't common across Connecticut in terms of the other alternative education programs we see structurally. So I'm curious, from a school accountability standpoint, what else might you recommend that Connecticut could do to help strengthen the framework and the policy so it's supportive of folks like yourselves that are doing this work?
So I'll just note quickly, I think I know that we're speaking about students who are off track, and just really being inclusive and just of the turnaround that we're able to have with students once they enter our programs, once they receive those supports, and just having a way in which that then gets represented within the data. That would be something that I think can be greatly beneficial for us.
If I might add, Andrew, I think Edgardo already hinted to non-college-based, career-based training opportunities, and I think Melanie from Mullane talked about the employer-based training opportunities, apprenticeships, things like that. We're working on that, and military is another one. Congress is actually working on legislation that would require Department of Defense to share data with the states that will allow us to know which of our high school graduates are going into the military, so that we can include it in things like our school accountability framework. So I think Edgardo is right on with some of those suggestions.
I'll say the funding, have the funding follow the student. You know, I mentioned that in one of my slides. We do, at OPP, we fundraise a lot to continue our model. So if the funding could follow the student, especially a disconnected student who requires more funding to bring those supports to.
And in addition to that, just one more question, then happy to open it up, is, you know, I'm struck by both tonight, but also in so many conversations, just how much good is happening in this state by people that are deeply committed to serve young people, to work together. Just so many folks are working so hard in it. It strikes me every time. And yet, you know, we still have a crisis. Like, we still in 2023 saw for the first time in recent history that the state graduation rate went down. At the end of 2023, 20% of ninth graders ended off track as a state. When you pull that data apart and look by race, by income, by town, by zip code, it gets worse. And so you've spoken to some of this, but I still, with all that's going on, we still have this crisis. And so to that prompt, like, what else can we do in addition to all that we are doing to address this?
I would say, recognize overage undercredited as a designation in the state of Connecticut, and making sure, again, I can't stress enough that the funding follow the student. You need youth development services that encompass workforce as well as post-secondary readiness in your alternative setting to make sure that the student has a path to graduation and then on to earning a livable wage with a certification.
Well, thank you for 3 great presentations. I'd like to ask Mr. Figueroa a question. We can certainly make a connection that we can reduce the number of disenfranchised and disconnected youth by their matriculation into an alternate school program. Can you take us through, like your school in particular, what are the best practices to ensure that there's a scrutinization at the middle school, to ensure that those in the middle school who really need an alternate school are being considered, and how are they matriculated in?
So the model that we currently have in East Hartford essentially starts, well, I'll start off by saying that the majority of our students are grades 10 through 12. But then that tracking really starts with East Hartford Middle School, starts with East Hartford High School, in which they're communicating regularly in regards to those middle school students who would really benefit from that additional support. So I know at the high school setting, they are often kind of assigned to caseloads and on-track coordinators throughout their 9th grades, and I think in 10th grade as well. But then for those students who continue to struggle, those are students who then get referred to us, right? Over at Synergy, and we meet with them, and I think where it really starts at Synergy is, and it's one of our core beliefs, is just establishing those relationships, right, in our building, and starting and just really prioritizing those relationships amongst everything else, because we know that that is a major factor that gets students to want to be in our buildings every single day. And then from there, once we have them engaged, then we start to provide that academic support. Then we provide to really dive into, we have the flexibility and the trust to be able to dive into those social, emotional issues, those tougher discussions that then ultimately lead to their success.
Do you think, sir, that we as mayors need to do a better job with our school districts in terms of helping the districts identify those that should go to an alternate school that might be falling through the cracks? And if so, what can we do?
That's a great question. I'm not sure if there's, I know I could speak to East Hartford just given the fact that I spent my time there, and I know there's considerable work that happens. I would say though that I'd agree to there being a need for the expansion of such programming, right? We're fortunate enough where we have a 10 through 12 program, and it, at times we kind of make the exception for 9th graders, but I think especially our folks at the middle school will agree that we do have to expand that, especially given some of the issues exacerbated by the pandemic, right? And some of the behaviors that we're seeing in our middle school. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So thank you all so much for, not just for being here, but for all the amazing work you do. I'd say both panels have touched on this, but if there was anything else you wanted to share with us in regards to earlier interventions, you spoke about middle school a bit, but are there things that we, whether in the school system or as communities, could be doing with younger populations that would probably better help prepare them for then when you might come and take them over?
Just as we talked about schools, districts being silos, if you will, and needing to connect even more with local partners, I think even within districts, sometimes school-to-school communication is not what it could be. So when the prior question was asked about how can we know early, again, I spoke about our early indication tool that we provide, which tells the district, the 7th and 8th graders who we know are going to need more support to be on track in 9th grade. So it's like, how can the school intervene? How can the high school already see before the kids even come in, and they have that information, before they even come in, who are the students who are gonna need high support before they come in? And conversely, who are the students who are excelling, who we need to place in a more advanced track, if you will, so that they can accelerate their learning? That information is available to the district, and we are working with our school district to sort of expand those connections, but leveraging that information and using that information more actively, I think would be another sort of thing I would put forward.
I had a question, well, actually two. Do you think our school systems or school districts are doing enough to partner with like after-school programs? So, for instance, a lot of the kids, you know, sometimes they don't have a family advocate, or the counselor can't get to them during school, you know, but they might go to the after-school program for 3 hours. Do you think the school districts are doing enough to engage the after-school programs, especially those that are in the community? Because a lot of the times, you know, the after-school programs may know what the schools don't. You know, a kid might be subject to tell his after-school counselor something that he might not want to tell his school counselor or his teacher. So I was going to ask, do you think that the school districts are doing a lot to engage the after-school programs? And if so, if not, you know, do you have like maybe a solution, a few solutions?
I'm not sure I can say whether or not they're connecting. I will just go back to the counselor who spoke about one social worker for, you know, X several hundreds or over 1,000 students or whatever. I mean, so I think that is part of the challenge, is how do you have adequate support so that even if you know, what can you do about it? Are you able to act on that information? So I would say that I'm not sure, like, I can't comment on the extent of the partnership. I would suspect that they're good because many of these after-school grants also go through the State Department of Ed, and go through the school district. So I would say that those partnerships are there. But I think the challenge always is when you have 1:200, 300 for a school counselor, or 1:1,000 for a social worker, being able to act on that information. And while these challenges may have existed before the pandemic, they have distinctly gotten worse after the pandemic. There's no question. So even our on-track rates that Andrew cited, they have gotten worse after the pandemic, especially for our students with needs, whether they be English learners, students with disabilities from low-income families. The outcomes have worsened, there's no question, after the pandemic.
And my second question was, I know a lot of people are mentioning about getting to them before the 9th grade. What do you think we can probably do more to get to them in 6th grade? So, you know, as Mr. Figueroa was saying, they come to him 10 to 12, they're referred probably 9th grade. School systems, I think, sometimes know that, okay, for instance, I was in 6th grade. Some may have knew that I was homeless, but I'm pretty sure there was some that did. How do we know that do you think that we are doing enough to get to them earlier?
I think there's room for improvement. Let me put it that way. Because I've had conversations with high schools, and I work primarily in the data assessment world, so I'm not necessarily running the programs or managing programs at the department. But I do hear of numerous instances where students end up getting assessed again when they enter high school. And my question always is, the kids have been assessed through middle school, why aren't those assessment results being used? And oftentimes it's because that information doesn't get through or get through in time. So I would say that there is definitely room for improvement in terms of that sharing of that information across our systems within the district, so that, you know, the opportunities that are available in high school become exposed to middle schoolers very earlier. There is legislation that talks about a student success plan to start in 6th grade. And I know that happens, but is it robust enough? So I think there are definitely areas of room for improvement in sort of doing that sort of planning and exposing students to the possibilities in high school and beyond earlier in middle school, and also allowing for that sharing of information so that high schools are better prepared to receive those students. And in Connecticut, we have very diverse systems of high school too. Yes, some of them are within one district, but sometimes students go to high school, across to regional districts and technical high schools and so on, endowed academies and so on. So I think that sort of exchange of information happens already when a student moves from one district to another. Our data follow that student, giving the new school information about what that student is bringing. So again, being able to leverage that information can really help sort of close some of those gaps.
Thank you all very much. As panelists, certainly Gerard and Ed, thank you for the work you lead every day on behalf of students. Sincerely, Ajit, for the work you lead on behalf of the agency, and also your leadership and collaboration in making this research possible, helping to raise awareness around this. So thank you all very much.
Yep. Can I just add one last thing before we go? I'm just looking at my notes and I forgot to talk about performance measures in alternative settings. And I was just wondering if you can help me. Does the state think about alternative education programs having different performance measures from a traditional setting? And if so, what do we have to do to uplift those? Because right now you have students coming to you two or three grades behind who need different supports, but the measures are all the same. So.
It's a very complex question because of the rules governing all of this, but there are different levels of accountability, if you will. There are formal accountability, but then there's also just reporting of data that happens. Per federal and state rules, we can't have different accountability systems for different settings, but that doesn't preclude us from having other measures that we report and draw attention to that are more sensitive to the efforts of alternative education programs. So I think, chronic absenteeism is one, which, we want to, we don't want our kids to be chronically absent. So that should be one where we should be able to see improvement. But I know in alternative ed programs, some of these students are coming to school half the time. They're not, that's how they're getting the students. So chronic absent is at 90%. Some of these students are coming in at 50% attendance. So, so sometimes even chronic absence isn't a good measure. So we don't have a perfect answer right now, but we could talk more.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Intermission? Yeah. So I went arts program for alternative groups to success, and that's what so this is yeah. Oh, remember we talking about the wood shop? But I couldn't make the class. This is an arts program. Section of this meeting, and I would like to first call up initials A.M. as in Mary, Bat from DAE, A as in Apple, M as in Mary. Okay. Okay, we're going to move along. Mr. Anthony Reed from United Way. Oh, okay, thank you. Mr. Anthony Reed from the United Way.
Greetings, everyone, to the 119 Commission and to all that are here today. My name is Anthony Reed. I am the Economic Mobility Manager at the United Way, Central Northeastern Connecticut. One of my many roles is to oversee the work of our young adults, the Young Legends. I work to provide young adults with employment resources and professional development training that exposes them to great opportunities to pursue the career of their dreams while changing the landscape and outlook of their communities. To answer the question of how can this commission in Connecticut can prevent youth and young adult disconnection is to expose students to various career pathways early. Okay, earlier, that's the word, than usual, and educating them on the journey and activities needed to get them there. This will have an impact on their lives and their families' lives. We should bring back official trade programs that are integrated in our schools, like they did at Prince Tech, all right? And that provide industry-recognized certifications, not just training in the program, but actual certifications so that when they come out of high school, they actually have the demand to make $25 an hour because they went for it. For example, there is great work in other parts of the state that have successful construction and building trades programs, allowing young adults to make livable wages. Investing in trade schools and programs not only benefit the students, but our communities and our economy. Over the last year or so, I have had the pleasure of connecting with workforce boards, youth development organizations, and career navigators across the nation that have created successful building trades programs and job training programs. As we invest in manufacturing and healthcare, we should consider also investing into other trades that are feasible. One of the examples, I call him a Hartford hero, his name is Lester G. And he had a barbershop called It's a G Thing. But he went from Prince Tech, he learned how to barber. Then he went to Morehouse College, and then when he came back through that pipeline, he built his own empire where he not only cut hair, but he also taught others how to cut hair, and he taught others. So it's possible if we can still do that in high school. You know, teach them how to do it in high school, not wait till they come out of high school and then they have to go into a trade school that puts them in more debt. And then they're still trying to figure out how to pay that debt for a job that they still haven't got yet. All right, but that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. And just wanted to note, everybody, you have 3 minutes when you come up. So next, Mr. Gaylord Salters from Go Get It Publishing. Mr. Salters.
I want to say good evening to the commission and everyone else here.
Good evening, sir.
All right. My name is Gaylord Salters, and I stand before you today not just as a speaker, but as a living testament to the power of resilience and the importance of provocative change. I'm honored to serve as the poster child for the nation's Second Look movement with the Sentencing Project in Washington, D.C. I also have the privilege of being a board member for Next Level Empowerment Program in the state of Connecticut, the director of the Break and Change Project for the state of Connecticut, and CEO of Go Get It Publishing. But more than any title, I'm here because I believe in the urgent need to protect our youth from the grips of the streets and a system that too often fails them, just as it once failed me. 2 years ago, I regained my freedom after spending 20 years wrongfully convicted. During those long years of unjust imprisonment, I found my purpose. I found Go Get It Publishing and authored a book titled Mama Bear: The Heartbreaking Struggles, Risks, and Results of Raising Minority Youth in Urban America. This book is not just a story, it's a call to action. Today I teach a curriculum to at-risk youth drawn from my personal experiences and the lessons embedded in my book. However, when I learned about the work of the 119K Commission, I felt an undeniable pull to be here today. I came for two reasons. First, to meet like-minded people who care about the direction of our children's lives, but more importantly, to connect with individuals who specifically care to make a difference for youth who are reeling in underserved communities like the one that I nearly had my life destroyed in. Therefore, if there's anyone in the room who shares this particular passion, I would love to speak further afterwards. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Salters. Next, Mr. James Butcher, James Butcher of Capital Workforce Partners.
Thank you, Josh. Jim Boucher from Capital Workforce Partners, and good to be here this evening. And speaking also on the behalf of the Hartford Opportunity Youth Collaborative, we have a number of people here who are participating in that. We wanted to thank the conference 119K Commission for its work, and also thank the Dalio Foundation for its significant investments, increasing public awareness, and for leading this discussion. Hartford Opportunity Youth Collaborative was launched in 2014 and is a collective impact model that incorporates the City of Hartford, Capital Workforce Partners, United Way, Hartford Public Schools, and dozens of community-based organizations, a number of who are here tonight, Hartford Foundation, and others. I would just note that, also the Hartford Opportunity Youth Collaborative is chaired by the Mayor of Hartford, and again, a collective impact model. Given time, I think I just wanted to note a couple quick and brief but very important items. Highly support the Commission's goal here to decrease the number of disconnected youth by 50% over 10 years. We applaud the call for action, the urgency, the crisis. These disparities that I've been talking about must be immediately addressed. We've been working as a collaborative to put together a 2-year action plan that's updated, that will be ready over the next month or two, and we would welcome sharing that with everybody here. We don't have the time right now to go through that, other than to say that the 9 recommendations that the Dalio report speaks to are, for us, very focused, and we fully support them. Some of the action items you had talked about, stakeholders working together, right? So we have a number of stakeholders in Hartford working together, and here are some of the themes. I'll just name some of the themes that will be part of the action plans. It will include following the definitional framework that the Dalio report put together for disconnected youth. So we have a data system, Hartford data system, that works with a Hartford Data Collaborative that will be working to make sure that a lot of the interventions follow that particular continuum, and we appreciate Dalio working with us to help us think about how the services follow that continuum. The Hartford Career Navigation System that Anthony talked about and others will be talking about is an effort that links youth services to where we see those key needs, and working with the Hartford Public School System that was talked a lot about tonight in terms of the schools connecting to youth services. We'll be sharing data as part of a new developed initiative called Scale Hartford, which is going to be looking at how do we reach 6,000 additional youth in Hartford through the Hartford Opportunity Youth Collaborative system over the next 3 years, supporting this goal that you're talking about in terms of reducing the disconnected youth population by 50% as soon as possible. Just briefly, the other 2 items that we're looking at in terms of the 2-year action plans would be how do we also connect with the statewide efforts going on. So if there are statewide efforts that are happening, such as the Legislative Disconnected Youth, as well as the Campaign for Work in Connecticut, the Governor's Workforce Council, and others that are trying to look at the statewide data system coming together, that will be a great, sort of progress. But we also want to see how that links to the local areas. So the local collaboration in Hartford will also connect the two. And most important is the substantial major public-private investments that need to occur. As was
Excuse me.
noted, we support that kind of investment that you speak a lot about, and
Yes,
fully
sir.
support that kind
I
of.
appreciate that, sir.
Thank
Thank you. Mr. John Prenz from the Connecticut Alliance for Arts Education.
Mrs. Dalio, Mr. Ferguson, and 119K commissioners, I ask you to contemplate for a moment the concepts prophylaxis and portability. We vaccinate our youngest against childhood diseases. We also have the power to inoculate them against disconnectedness. At your last meeting, I spoke about children gathering in a music room or cafeteria with their guitar or piano playing teacher to sing, often at the start of a school day. Please Google PS22 Chorus, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It proclaims to viewers, "We are community." These students are developing and practicing foundational skills and experiences, listening to and communicating with each other, acting as one in service to a greater whole, nurturing and exercising voice and agency, demonstrating that difference enhances good results, all while simply enjoying a shared experience. These are not lessons with quizzes and exams. They are the building blocks of learning that are portable to other learning experiences throughout the school day. They are joyous experiences that connect students to adults, to each other, and to an ongoing in-school experience, all of which shapes the culture in the building and in children's consciousness. Such joyful learning journeys nourish self-esteem. Students engage because they feel like they have a reason to be there, that they belong. The experience translates to I am seen, I am heard, I am worthy of respect. Children who experience those feelings together begin to excel at doing whatever they can to keep them flowing for themselves and for each other. Soon and in some other forum, we will expand on arts education research, pointing to decreased disciplinary action, increased graduation rates, advancement to post-secondary education, the roles of the arts, trauma, and healing. I would love to address the missed leadership opportunities and capacity building opportunities for arts educators and administrators. By elevating our focus on the arts to where it belongs as a priority, we can create a vaccine against disconnectedness. It is arguably the best investment we can make in our children's ability to engage with their world and to hope for a rich and fulfilling life. I hope we are up to the task. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Prince. Next, we have Monica. Is it Brace? I'm sorry if I said your last name wrong.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's okay, it's okay. I'm Dr. Monica Brazzi, and I spoke down in New Haven earlier. I'm an educator. I've been in education for 23 years, 15 of those years in Hartford, teaching in alternative education, also magnet schools. Also, I was a principal at a turnaround school. I went back into the classroom for alternative education at Windsor for the last 8 years. Also a member of the Connecticut Association of Alternative Schools and Programming. And on the side, I do educational consulting, and I'm starting up a new nonprofit called Empowered Alternatives, focusing on developing, advocating, and researching alternatives to education. So, as you can see, I live for trying to find ways to engage and re-engage our disengaged or disconnected youth. You can ask anyone who knows me, this has been a passion of mine since my second year of teaching. And as the mayor of Hartford said, our systems are failing some of our youth. And I believe we need to think outside the box. So it's great that you're having these conversations, and I appreciate that. Some of our youth, many of which I've worked with, have experienced trauma, economic and housing instability, food instability. They have a lot of things going on. And as was stated, 70% of the students in alternative education end up disconnected still. So even with our current alternative education programming, it's still very difficult. And I find in my experience, some of it is still very traditional. We still go based off of seat time and Carnegie units, teacher directed. We ask students to come to us and our school systems where many students and parents have had negative experiences growing up, or they don't have the experience to navigate the system. So for example, my mom has an 8th grade education in Japan. She didn't know how to navigate the United States education system. We need to think about school differently. As you said, graduation rates are lower after in 2023, and I find that we went back to teaching the same way we taught pre-COVID. We could have used that time to re-envision education, and our students have come with some different needs and experiences as well. We need to go to them. We need to have students and parents involved in developing programming and not be in silos anymore, but part of the community. Most of my students want an education, but they don't like the system, and they feel the curriculum and the topics are not relevant to their lives, and they're also not connected to school. That came up quite a bit. And the schools are definitely too large or very large for some of them. So I know funding is an issue, but I think we have to think differently about education to help our students succeed in college, career, and life. And what people have talked about here tonight is important. The smaller environments, project-based learning, mastery-based education, working in apprenticeship programs, and most importantly, building those relationships. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Monica. Next, Mr. Samuel Cephas. My uncle's name was actually Cephas Samuel. Yeah, my great uncle, honestly. Cephas Samuel.
Good evening. I'm glad to come back home. We moved here in 1970. I attended Northwest Catholic, and at that time when I graduated from Northwest Catholic, there was only 11 blacks out of 700 kids. The person that actually pushed me to go to a black college, even though I was accepted at UCLA and other colleges, was Mayor Saxon Perry. She was the first black mayor of New England. And I worked with her son for several years until he died last year in Waterbury, Dr. James Perry. He was one of my best friends. This is my first time being in this chamber in the last 15 years. MC Square was built off of a 199 average kids that was in Barber Street. Had Clark, Wish, and Waverly. The principal of Waverly was actually the former superintendent of Bloomfield School, was Dr. Fred. I'm glad to come back because the people behind me asked me to come back. I have Bishop Mitchell from King's Chapel, Upper Albany, one of the most successful churches in Upper Albany and Albany Avenue. I have Lee Law Firm. I have actually one of my famous kids. He just created his own company of creative cultures. He deals with disability kids and disparity kids. I work with Workforce Partners with Dennis Mink when he was there, and I did actually got my hair cut at G thing before he passed away this past year. I'm part of Hartford, left Hartford because Hartford did not see the vision of what I've seen. You have to actually connect STEM and arts together. And the way Hartford was from 2001 to 2012 was over 60% dropout rate. Dr. Abramowski chopped the schools up, and this is what it is right now. If you're looking for a model, that's not me. If you're looking for the model, I have the model, because I dealt with 700 kids between Hartford and Waterbury. I've been Waterbury from since 2015 to the present. I work with new opportunities with William Risbick. I've spoke to the mayor of Torrington about less than 3 weeks ago. I spoke to Mr. Ferguson. I have the model if you're looking for it. I've dealt with from food to housing. I've gotten out of my bed 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to help these kids that is actually disenchanted. I do not deal with kids that are actually going to kill somebody or rape people, but I deal with kids that actually, if they need the help, Sam Cephas at MC Square will be there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cephas.
Josh, can I say one quick thing?
Yes, you can.
One, I just want to acknowledge Sam for 2 reasons. One, he's the 50th person to offer public comment through this regional meeting process. And with even more distinction, Sam, we've done 5 regional public meetings. Sam has been in person to at least 4, if I have my count correct. From all of them. All of them. From Trumbull to Meriden we've been to Hartford. Sam has been to all of them in person, so I just thank you for that commitment to this process, your input to this process, and you being here again. Thank you.
I'd just like to add that I have friends in London, in London with you, and I need help. I'm coming to you.
We have every confidence you will be there, Sam. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mrs. Banks, sorry, from the Young Legends Ascend. And I also wanted to say, I'll second what you already said about Mr. Cephas, so yes, thank you for that commitment too.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello, my name is Tania Banks, and I am the co-chair of the Young Legends, an initiative under United Way, Northeastern Connecticut. The Young Legends is a group of young adults working to connect youth ages 16 to 29 to careers and job resources. I am also a leader in the North Hartford Navigation Hub. My work revolves around helping raise the youth voices related to the workforce. As a mother of 4 children and a young adult maneuvering through the system, I can both feel and hear exactly what these youth are experiencing. It helps me know exactly what needs to be changed systematically. When it comes to 119,000 youth in the community who are disconnected, the solution lies in the hands of the people who are supposed to be changing the system in order to fit the youth in it. Providers and employers have to create space for youth in our systems. Jobs, resources, and programs often create outlandish qualifications and specifically count out the youth in our community, making it impossible for the youth to be able to access and benefit these things that are created for them. And, you know, it can better our lives if we start opening up a little bit more and realizing that these qualifications aren't working anymore. For some positions and for many providers, they don't serve. You know, requiring a college degree doesn't serve us because a lot of our experience comes from real life. I've been doing this for 15 years. I don't have a college degree, but I'm standing right in front of you and I know exactly what I'm talking about. Right. Now, United Way hires young people as Young Legends in order to simply connect other youth and people to career resources, and they hire us to host programs and trainings for young people. Better yet, as a youth leader working in the Navigation Hub, I get to help with the intake process in both positions. I speak on a lot of youth firsthand, and I hear their experiences. Doing this, I learned that there's another disconnect in the information. For what's available in the community, it's not being clearly marketed to the youth. Youth do not have a safe space to create community and find resources. The concept of hubs has been a small start to changing that. My recommendation is that there should be more opportunities for youth and people to help make decisions and to be paid for their time. So youth should be a part of every part of this process. The work that I do under the Young Legend has opened my eyes to so many different solutions that can help create a new reality for youth in our communities. How can you create something for us without us? We have the knowledge and capability to help create the solutions for ourselves as long as we have people open and willing to give us the opportunity. So this 119K youth, all they need is knowledge and a chance. Honestly, we will see a difference in so many areas. It'll raise our economy, do some more people working, put money back into the community. There'll be less violence because everyone will be working and we'll have a way to create community from those hubs, and the list goes on. The solution is in us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Banks. And I also don't feel ashamed. I don't have a college degree either, and I made it this far. So,
Hey, Josh,
Yes.
if I may, I just wanted to give a little recognition myself. This lady's young children have been sitting in this room on these hard wooden chairs for going on 4 hours and are just troopers. And so I have 2 daughters, one's a teenager, one's preteen. I could only wish that they were as well behaved in this environment as what your children are. So take them for some ice cream or something, Mom. You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
please do. Because usually it's like, you know, it's like get loud. It's like they were in church or something. So I wanted to say that too. Mrs. Taniqua Chaplin, excuse me, from the United Way of Central and Northeastern Connecticut. Mrs. Taniqua. Okay. Mr. Tariq Levy, Mr. Tariq Levy, excuse me, I'm sorry. I was looking at another name too. From the Capital Workforce Partners.
Hi, good evening. Thank you to the commission and everyone for attending tonight. My name is Tariq Levy-Bulliam. I'm the Career Navigation Systems Coordinator at Capital Workforce Partners. And it really is my great pleasure to really speak about the Career Navigation Systems Development Initiative we have been working on over the last year. We really believe that this project has a lot of immense potential for the youth of Hartford. So this initiative is a key strategy of the Hartford Opportunity Youth Collaborative, as Jim Boucher mentioned, as well as the Hartford Working Cities Partnership. And this, this is a collaborative effort between United Way, Central and Northeastern Connecticut, and the City of Hartford. And similar to the commission, this initiative came out of response to the growing trends of disconnection seen statewide, but especially in Hartford, which were only exacerbated by the pandemic. So right now we have just under about 10,000 young people, aged 14 to 29, disconnected from both education and employment opportunities. And Hartford is in a very unique situation. While our problem isn't, essentially a lack of resources, it's more of, we have an abundance of these resources, but very few people are accessing them. So we believe by addressing, key pain points with the system through modifications that would increase more interagency coordination and encourage and facilitate warm referrals between agencies. We believe young people be connected quickly to the needed services based off of their situation, and eventually lead to getting back to education, as well as the workforce and living and getting livable wages. So our strategies up to date through this initiative we have been holding monthly Career Navigator community practice meetings. These meetings really focus on sharing resources and best practices, as well as professional development for capacity building for career navigators, who are the agency staff who are working directly with young people, to either connecting them to resources or directly providing those services themselves. As we've also built an online resource directory where providers can share program information related to workforce with both young people and other navigators. We've also piloted a place-based career navigation hub, which my colleague Tania Banks mentioned. And this is a place-based project where, instead of young people coming to, let's say, an American Job Center to connect with services, we're engaging with them in environments that they're already safe and comfortable in, where they can access the entire system of services by engaging with both family and career navigators, as well as youth leaders with related experience.
Thank you, Mr. Tariq. Appreciate it, but the time is up. I'm going to have to move over to Mrs. Terry Streeter from the Watkinson School. Thank you again, Tariq.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. My name's Terry Schrader. I'm the head of school at Watkinson School in Hartford. For 140 years, Watkinson has continually recognized and addressed the needs of a very diverse population in our city. Our students come from the city of Hartford and from 40 surrounding towns, and we have a demonstrated record of successfully serving a wide range of students and their needs. As a Hartford school, we have a long history of partnerships with dozens of nonprofits and organizations, and those relationships and commitments are strong and more vibrant now than ever. We have attended all the meetings of the 119K Commission, and we believe that you are looking for strategic partnerships to accomplish the goals of this commission. Watkinson is a private school with a public purpose, and that has been part of our central mission since our founding. This commission seems to be wanting to pull together people with the means, the commitment, the expertise to make a difference, and we want to be a part of that solution. Good schooling is based on research and disciplined dedication of limited resources and an understanding of the real, enduring, deepest value of education to every student we serve, but to the very fabric of our society. At Watkinson, we're a little worried about democracy and civil discourse, and we believe that the future depends on an educated populace, young people who not only feel connected, but who know that they are connected, because that is where their power resides, is in their connectedness. Strong schools are the antidote to disconnected youth. This is the work that we have no right to put aside. 50 years of neglect at the educational level can't be addressed with a patchwork of solutions that arrive when our students are in high school or beyond. Addressing disconnectedness from school is a problem that starts early, and the focus must be on early childhood and middle school education, setting our students up for success in high school and life beyond. If education is an emergency, as the data suggests, then we absolutely must treat it with a sense of urgency, which means getting more of our children into proven programs as soon as is practical, now, like now, investing in their future today. At Watkinson, we have some specific programs that are currently operating with a high success rate that address the concerns outlined in your report. Specifically, Watkinson's Sphere program has been in operation for 52 years, offering summer programming. Right now, there are 68 students from Hartford, age 5 to 11, in a full-time, high-quality educational and recreational program that also focuses on readiness for the next school year. As a Hartford school, we want to be part of this conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate you, Ms. Terry. Now we have Mr. Timothy Goodwin from the Community First School.
Good evening. Mr. Ferguson, you said earlier there's still a crisis. What more can be done? Hope I can answer that question for you in 3 minutes. Mr. Brown, you wanted to know about the disconnect between after-school programs and comprehensive high schools. Can't answer that now, but I got you on that one if you want to reach out later. And Ms. Carbone, 2 of my sons graduated last year from Wilkett Tech. They're both doing exceptionally well. I have 2 girls who are juniors at the high school, and my daughter's wrapping up college now. She graduated Torrington High School as well, so appreciate your system. I live in Hartford for the last 10 years, worked with community folks, residents, to form Community First School. There's 4 things that we did differently. The reason I left public education after 35 years, 15 as a history teacher and the rest as an administrator, was because of the inhibitors. As we made progress, it seemed there was a lot of pushback to that progress. So by forming our own school, we felt like we could have things in place that we could then use later to influence public education. One, being a history teacher, I looked at the history of education. The focus, one of the goals of public education has been compliance. That doesn't work well with today's youth, especially with technology. We focus on purpose. If you can help a student identify their purpose or purposes, you can compete with technology and other things that draw them away. But the focus, that's a big mindset change that has to happen in public schools. I can't go more in, I only have 3 minutes. Second, mental health. Ms. Thomas talked about mental health. 100% of our students at Community First receive mental health services during the school day, through after-school martial arts and through group, what we call group on Mondays. 68% of those families receive mental health services from the same agency outside the school day. So it is possible. It doesn't have to be just one counselor. You can partner and you can have all your students receiving services. You can break down the stigma. It's possible. Second, schools are placed into neighborhoods, and when they go into neighborhoods, it's expected that the neighborhood assimilates to the school. That's backwards. The school has to understand the neighborhood, the ethnicities, the cultures of the neighborhood that they serve. 100% of our teachers are black and brown. 100% of our students are black and brown. Our principals are black male. It is possible. When I was at Weaver High School, 80% of the teachers are white, 99% of the teachers were black, students are black or brown. It doesn't have to be that way. That's part of the system that needs to be changed. And lastly, just a 3 really quick things that can happen in any comprehensive high school, not just a small school like Community First. There could be a longer school day. It doesn't have to end at 2 or 3 o'clock. Every student can be required to do some type of after-school program. It is possible to have after-school programs as part of the school day. There are hundreds of after-school programs that would come in if the school districts would let them. That's key. Career pathways should start in kindergarten. We start our kindergartners, they're ornithologists. They're learning about bugs because what little kid doesn't want to learn about bugs? And summer programs should also be required, I think, for every student across the board, some type of summer program. If it's not academic, it can be theme-based. There's a lot more, but I'm going to hold because we don't have the time.
Thank you, Mr. Good. Well, just one quick question. Did you say that they have martial arts too? Did you say that?
So martial arts, it's martial arts connected to mental health because there's a stigma in the black community around mental health services. So if you can break down that stigma and let folks know that this is a good thing, not something to be scared of. So we do mental health through group, which is called leadership. So it's a leadership class, but it's really mental health services, teaching students how to problem solve, how to conflict manage. You get to learn what's going on in the home, and then you can refer, now that the students and families believe in that agency, now that you can refer them outside of school, so which is why we have 68%. And 100% of the 68% who are receiving services outside of school report that it's extremely helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Good.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Next, is it Kamari Thornton from the United Way of Central Northeastern Connecticut? Kamari. Kamara. Okay. Mr. Roshan, Lee. Mr. Lee from Clarissa Lee Law Group.
I help you out with that. My name is Rashawn Lee, and this is my wife, Clarissa Lee. I manage and she owns Clarissa Lee Law Group, and Hartford is our home, so welcome. As a self-appointed 119 ambassador, our conversations with youth are private, sometimes protected by attorney-client privilege. We gain the trust because we resemble the population that we represent. In education, it's almost impossible to be able to teach somebody something if they don't trust you. And teachers want to be trusted, but most of the time the teachers don't even trust the children. Most teachers in Hartford will not walk down, most people will not walk down Albany Avenue or Main or the side streets because of some of the problems that happen in that community. We understand the importance of education, but I want to help you guys understand something. It's a term in the neighborhood. The term is called beef. You may not be familiar with what beef is, but beef is a situation where if I see you on site, I'm gonna murder you. And if you see me on site, you're gonna murder me, or at least make an effort to do that. And with the youth today, they are walking around with firearms. They're not going to school because school is a location where people commonly come and run into one another. So I'd rather not get an education if my life is on the line because of some situations that I may gotten involved with. So all your data and stats will not help you resolve beef. And the only people that can kind of mitigate the beef is people that used to be in beef. I told you the last time I was here, I carried a gun every day at one point in my life. And I wasn't a registered, firearm carrier. But I did it not just to be malicious, I did it because I really was worried that somebody was gonna attack me and I'd kill a man before I let a man kill me. That was my mentality. And my wife she took over that now, So another thing that I wanna make a really important point, I know I only got 3 minutes, is that we have to recognize that there are a large percentage of people that are young, that are incarcerated, that are on parole, that's on probation, that's coming home, the recidivism. If they're not connected with education, they're connected with the prison system somehow. And if we don't, the numbers that you have, I'm not going against your stats, but I'm telling you, when you say the numbers are going down, we know why the numbers are going down, because charges are being thrown away. You're making it to juvenile court, and then there's guys going in and out of jail that got 3 gun charges. Charges are being thrown away to make the stats look good. But walk through the neighborhood. I walk with every one of y'all tonight. I could do it. Ain't nobody gonna shoot me over there. So it's important to recognize that there's more to it than just people that don't want to learn. There's some things that's going on that you may not be privy to. And if you're not aware of some of the problems that exist on the north end and on the different areas of Hartford, then guess what? You are inviting someone to come to school that you might end up being at their funeral. And you wonder, like, how did that happen? And then you wonder, why did that happen? Because that kid was doing some things, that kid was trying to make some money, poverty is real, and if you can't offer someone a way to make a living, then guess what? I hate to say it, but you're wasting their time. And I'm coming to you because I support 119. I'm going to always say it. I'm the 119 ambassador. I live, breathe this thing right here because I deal with the children and I deal with the people, and I'm connected with a crew that's here, that's willing and ready and able to support. And I also know lawyers that want to do the same thing. So if I'm at the table, my resources at the table as well. I'm not coming asking for money. I want to offer something.
I appreciate that.
But thank you.
Thank you. And I also wanted to acknowledge Mr. Lee has been at about 4 of our meetings as well. I don't know if you came to the first one in New Haven, but I do know that Mr. Lee has been to all our commission meetings, 4 of them. So I did want to acknowledge that as well. And I also will tell you that what you're saying about Hartford and the youth, we actually are going into the Hartford Residential Center to speak to the same youth that you're talking about, that are carrying the guns, that are talking about beef. And we have been beef, what you say is beef, what we say conflicts that we have. That is a big issue that we've been talking about, because as we know, if you're going to shoot somebody, you're probably not going to want to go to school, because you might see the person at school that you might want to shoot.
That's right.
So those are the things that we are addressing with the young people as well. And we do appreciate when you come here and you do speak. So just wanted to put that on the record too. I'm going to move along to Mrs. I'm sorry, I can't. I don't want to say anybody's last name wrong. From the Hartford Board of Education, Mrs. Is it Francis? Francis? It's kind of a little, there's Tell, Legacy. From the Hartford Board of Education, Ms. Francis, okay. We're going to move along. I think she left. Oh, she left? Okay. Jay Perry from GBP. Jay? Is it an initial? Is it J? Okay, just wanted to make sure I was saying it right. All right. And is GBP abbreviated?
Yes.
Okay, what does this stand for, if I don't mind
It stands
asking?
for Guided by Purpose.
Guided by Purpose, thank you.
It's Guided by Purpose Reentry Initiative. I am the co-founder. I'm also the co-executive director and vice president. What I do is I help young people. I speak to young people. I mentor young people, but I mentor them before they become incarcerated, and some of them after they become incarcerated. I myself, I did several decades of incarceration. I came home. I started this organization. Few of the young men that spoke, Mr. Lee and also Mr. Salters, we all know each other, and we all have been through several programs that, help the youth. I also speak to the youth. We go to the schools, and like Mr. Lee said, you have the education. We all for the education. But when it comes down to the street, you have to understand it's 2 different things going on here. You got some young kids, they want to go to school, and they want to be educated, but they can't risk their life.
Right.
But then you have those that there are ones that are causing the trouble, and that's when a person like me comes along and I speak to them either while they're incarcerated, from the time when I was incarcerated, or when they come home, to try to get them on a better path, which is the path of rehabilitation. Because if you don't have no rehabilitation for these young people that's out here running the streets, all the education in the world is not going to save them. Because we all know you only got one life. I could go to many colleges. There are many universities in this country, but there's only one life. So now you have to get to the youth. You have to figure out a way how to get to them, to educate them on staying away from the violence and going to school. I know many young people that are smarter than I am, but they can't go to school. So what you do is you try to get programs after school. What happened to the after school programs? What happened to the mentors coming to the schools and speaking to the young kids to try to keep them away from the violence? Because some kids, they're not out in the street, but the street is calling them. You best believe that. The street is calling them, and it's calling them real loud. And if you don't get in those schools and start talking to these young people, I spoke to some young kids over here, what's that, Arthur Brenner Elementary School, not too far from here, a couple of months ago. And this is an elementary school. These kids are in 5th, 6th, 7th grade. But they understood where I was coming from because they have friends and they have family members that's been incarcerated. Young kids were sitting there telling me how many friends they had that been shot. Because I asked them, how many of you young kids know somebody that's been shot or even have been shot yourself? The majority of the kids raised their hand.
Mr. Perry, thank you. I appreciate your words.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Ron Canada.
Hello, thank you for the chance to speak. My name is Ron Canada. I'm a history teacher, 20 years in middle and high school, and I follow success for opportunity youth and mentorship via Communities of Connecticut entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship nonprofits that allow students who are disconnected to be aware of their surroundings. That is changing as a social net of changes post-pandemic, especially financially. I've taught many history subjects in Connecticut, but I'm most proud of the Black and Latino studies for several districts and the new curriculum that passed several years ago. Inside this curriculum, I was allowed to modify units that add local resources for opportunity youth. We speak about historical entrepreneurship, such as Madam C.J. Walker, and youth entrepreneurship of today in a project-based learning Shark Tank style seminar. Whether it's Alice of You Rise Ventures, a nonprofit that teaches entrepreneurship, or positive mentorship of the Clarissa Lee Law Group, my classroom has partnered with entrepreneurs in underserved communities with the investment in new programs such as the Sheba Accelerator of Color that will allow students to tap into areas that are much needed but also underutilized in everyday curriculum. Many immigrants are also entrepreneurs and have expressed interest in entrepreneurship training, which have families begin to have hard conversations about financial stability. As a Black male completing his doctorate in emerging tech online at Abilene Christian University, I asked the panel ahead of me to begin to look to create a digital portal to showcase new and innovative entrepreneurship resources and curriculum that already exists in every single local community. With this support, the efforts of dual enrollment of the Connecticut State Community College will increase for non-traditional students as a component of practicum, with nonprofits and entrepreneurs of color around the state, which will help students thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Canada. Where are you from again? Sorry, if the organization you want to put?
I'm just a public school teacher.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right.
Mr. Dion Kelly.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dion Kelly. I am a youth development specialist at Our Piece of Power Incorporated. So I just wanted to speak upon my personal positionality, not only as a youth participant, but also a youth in the midst of the work. I started at OPP as an intern, and I didn't know that I would be in this position to be one of many voices for my fellow peers in the midst of like how we're positioned, how we're seen in Hartford, Connecticut. And the reality is that the semantics are great, right? Dealing with workforce readiness, dealing with education, dealing with programming, but what about our voice? Youth voice is the most important tool that we have. So in the midst of having these conversations, I honestly don't see not one of us, not only in the midst of this room, but also at the midst of this table. So to make an attempt to see what could be done, it's not really about something that's solution-based or oriented. I think it's more about the spaces themselves that are collaborative and active. For example, I'm proud to be one of many co-advisors for the Youth Leadership Council, the first of its kind at Our Piece of Power Incorporated, to help my fellow peers, well, in tandem, my participants, really thrive in the midst of the work and being a voice in the midst of their communities. Having these empowering youth-led groups will allow us to be more impactful in the midst of the 119,000 crisis, and allows for an opportunity for youth participants to be more connected. Finally, a recommendation I would have for you guys as commission is to not be afraid of the issues of the conflicts that you're seeing, but be more in tune with it and active and collaborative as we are, thus connecting with youth leadership boards and groups of many kind in a traditional or non-traditional setting. And again, I thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
And thank you, Mr. Kelly. Appreciate that. Mrs. Shelley McNulty? Sorry. And while we wait for Ms. Shelley again, like Mr. Kelly was saying, engaging those youth, I commend this commission from the start. Before you go, Ms. Kelly, I was kind of like adamant about we're going to have to go to the people, go to these kids, sit at these round tables. These are the kids that are disconnected, disengaged. And from the mayors to Andrew and CCM, Joe DeLong, his whole team, they have been going right to them, from the community to literally to our prisons. So I did, again, just want to put that on the record. Hats off to all of you. And we might take that walk, Mr. Lee, one of these days when I can get some time.
Hi, everyone. I wasn't expecting or planning on speaking tonight, but I came. This is the first time me participating in this, and I'm so happy to, that you guys have this commission, and I applaud you for efforts that you're putting forward. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I want to speak a little bit about myself, my experience, and then what I do and some thoughts that I have. So I'll first start with my life experience. My mother was a DCF foster child. She lived in foster care until she was 16, at which point she signed out of the DCF foster care system, and she went to work full time because she could not handle going to another school. She went to 8 schools within 7 years. So she is the basis of where I grew up. My father was an alcoholic, ended up in prison a couple times, and so we did end up homeless for a little bit. And I went to 7 different elementary schools before I was in 2nd grade. Say that, fast forward, I then went to school myself. I got myself through, my bachelor's, master's, whatever. I have a master's in social work, a licensed clinical social worker. I've worked for DCF I worked at DCF as a DCF social worker and DCF supervisor. I've been a school social worker as a director of special ed, and I left the school system 4 years ago because I'm also a single mom with 4 children. My 4 children are 16 to 20. They're your age group. And they have struggled through the pandemic. Mental health issues. One of my daughters have been in and out of 2 of my daughters have been in and out of the hospital. And my son right now is struggling with social media, the impact of social media and how it affects kids in school. All of that said, that's not necessarily why I'm here, but I want you to understand that I have a great background knowledge, experience, and understanding of these kids, and I'm passionate about it, and I have been all my life. What I want to say right now, I'm a director of clinical and in-home services. We provide support for students who are school avoidant. I don't like using the word school avoidant. I'd rather say that they're struggling with their mental health issues, and I'm working to get them to participate in life, because that's how I use the words. I don't like, school refusal is a horrible word to use, because the kids aren't refusing, they just can't. I can't tell you how many of the kids that we work with, I walk into the home, meet the parents, and they're like, I don't know what you want to do. He's been in his room for 3 weeks now. He hasn't taken a shower since, the first of the month. Like, this is the kids that I'm working with, the serious mentally ill students who are struggling. They can't even get to a hospital to be hospitalized to get the medication that might help support them with being able to walk into school. So my program right now, for every student that we work with, we assign them a clinical case manager, and I have a mentor. The mentor builds a very, very close relationship with the student. The mentor will work with the student 15 to 30 hours a week, depending on what the student needs. We'll build that relationship, get to know that kid inside and out. What do they like? What do they not like? What's working for them? What's not working for them? We will go to the home. We're at the home at some of the homes at 6 o'clock in the morning, helping that kid wake them up, get that morning routine going, helping the students get to school by providing transportation if they miss the bus. So we're trying to fix all the wraparound services. We're trying to work on getting them connected, but it's still not enough. And I'm only working, we're small scale at this point. I have about 25 families I'm working with. In the school year, I probably had about 45 families, but we're small scale at this point. I would love to see this program become bigger. It's similar to LEAP, more intensive than LEAP, but we're in the
Yeah.
outskirts more than in the bigger
Ms.
cities.
Shelley, thank you. I appreciate that. Just one quick question. Do you want to put your organization down, the name of your organization?
Connecticut Behavioral Health.
Connecticut Behavioral Health.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. I just want to give you two quick things. Just
No, because I'm sorry. We have to move on through the timing. So
Okay.
I have to call up Mrs. DeLone. Ms. DeLone. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Odile Dulone. I'm the Connecticut State Capital Campus Director of Workforce Development and Continuing Education. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was with regards to the silos that are out there within the workforce development ecosystem. We need more partnerships. There's still a lot of silos, different agencies not working together, and partnerships are key to success. I want to highlight the Hartford Career Navigation that was mentioned earlier, that CWP, the City of Hartford, and the United Way are putting together. Different agencies, all career navigation in the City of Hartford, working together, helping each other, teaching each other about what each of the agencies are doing. I think that's a great way to do this, and more communities should be doing that. I also want to highlight a grant where the Kresge Foundation selected six cities to do the Boost Grant, where they were partnering a community-based organization with a training organization to provide training and wraparound services to keep the student in the classes. Because, you know, it's not just about the class and the hard skills. There is plenty of other things like the soft skills, you know, the transportation, the childcare. All of that stuff was provided by our community-based organization, which in our case was Catholic Charities. That partnership has actually made our relationship stronger. So even to this day, we're still working together after the grant is over. And we complement each other. So if there are things that we need, we'll tell them. If there is training they were looking for, they will talk to us, and we either connect in one of the other campuses that may be providing the training that we didn't have at the Capitol campus. And, you know, they were addressing, for example, needs that, you know, the students have. So we provided the training. The student is done with the training, now they have to find employment. So they help the student find employment, but how does the student gets to the employment, to the job that they're doing? How do they pay for childcare until they get that first paycheck? How do they pay for the bus passes, for the uniforms? You know, all of that stuff was kind of like out in the air. We gave you the training, but now what? So that agency was providing the wraparound services that we couldn't provide because we were doing the training. So it's just about, you know, finding ways for the communities to break down their silos, even if the community takes charge of that and assigns organizations like Hartford did with the career navigation program that CWP United Way Hartford are doing, and making sure the agencies are working together with each other, informing about all the different services that they have. Because there's plenty of services out there, there's plenty of agencies, but they just need to work together to help each other. And then just one last quick thing with regards to the counselors that were mentioned earlier being overwhelmed is, now that we have AI, maybe it is time for the communities to start doing a survey of the tasks that are being assigned to the counselors and seeing how many of those tasks can be delegated to an AI program. And then that will free up time for the counselors to actually have that one-on-one with the student that they're looking for.
Thank you, Mrs. DeLone. Oh, you had a question? Oh, Mrs. Taniqua Hughley. Is it Hughley?
Good evening. My name is Taniqua Hughley Chaplin. I'm the Director of Economic Mobility Initiatives at the United Way of Central and Northeastern Connecticut. And one of my many roles at United Way, I have the great pleasure of working with young adults. You heard from Tania Banks earlier, and my colleague Anthony Reed, in addition to my colleagues in the back, Jim Boucher and Tariq as well. One of the most recent projects that we have been working on is the implementation of the Navigation Hub in the North End in partnership with Capital Workforce Partners, the City of Hartford, the Village for Children and Families, and the North Hartford Ascend Pipeline. The Navigation Hub is a place-based youth engagement and service strategy targeting Hartford youth ages 14 to 29 who have been disconnected from education in the labor workforce. The hub is currently in a pilot stage. We just launched in May. However, this model brings together career navigators, family navigators, and youth leaders from multiple agencies to coordinate youth and young adult intake and referral services. Excuse me. We're working to ensure that We're bringing together career navigators, family navigators, and youth leaders from multiple agencies to coordinate those referral services, which I just referred to. So yes, that is a real thing, different agencies coming together under one roof, working together. And so though the hub has only been in full operation for less than a few months, it's proven to be a much needed resource for our young people. As mentioned, we have young adults working alongside navigators, giving them a job, yes, but also allowing to connect them to their peers. And so, as I said, Tania Banks is one of our youth leaders in the hub, participating in that navigation process. This was made possible because we valued the opinions and thoughts of young adults. They were a part of the hub design from the beginning. Throughout the years of working with young adults, they have consistently asked for a safe space that allowed them to hang out, lounge around, but also receive career and job training services, social services, and just a programming space where programs are created for them, by them. I believe this type of resource would save the lives of many of our young people. It saved mine. Growing up in New York City, the largest housing projects in North America, Queensbridge houses, if anyone is familiar, and going to school in South Jamaica, Queens, many of my friends and family members would have also been identified as disconnected. If there were free hubs that had the staff that looked like them, who assisted and helped them with tutoring, provided mentoring, job training, programs, sports, and social services, they would not have been in the streets or in prison or unfortunately dead. I was fortunate enough to be able to enroll in a program called Legal Outreach, which served as the ideal hub that I mentioned. However, the focus was college. But if this structured program allowed me to come to Hartford, Connecticut, pursue an education, and pursue a job, that opportunity can be offered in other places in the state. So my recommendation is to simply continue to support and invest in navigation hubs throughout the state, and also ensure that young adults are a part of the conversation from beginning to the end and have true power to participate in decision-making processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Tanika. That concludes our public comment portion. I am now going to pass it over to Mayor Passero. Mayor Passero?
Thanks, Josh. Well, we made it. Almost 3.5 hours in. But thank you all for your perseverance and for your participation. It's a great help to us. We are indebted, of course, to our panelists tonight. A lot of great material for us to think about, to digest. I do want to thank CCM and the great work of their staff, all the work they do behind the scenes to set up these forums for us. So thank you, Joe, for that, and relay that thanks. And of course, thanks to the Dalio Foundation for supporting this effort. There's a lot, we heard a lot tonight, we have a lot to think about. But I just want to point out something that I picked up on from Ms. Thomas's testimony, and I think it's a good segue to our next meeting in New London, which will focus on workforce, post-secondary pathways, employment supports, and wraparound services. And Ms. Thomas said that we have to be able to offer our students more than a pathway to college. And I think that's, at least from my experience in my city, that's what our education system is too strongly focused on. And that's not always what our youth need. They need more options, and it shouldn't be second best if you choose something other than higher education when you're through your high school. And I think overshadowing all of this is our responsibility as leaders of our city to take care of our youth from cradle to career. And that's not cradle to college. College may not be in that formula. So that's my takeaway. We all have our different takeaways from this, but I do want to encourage you to take the trip to New London, or at least sign on to view the next forum I guess it's 1199commission.org. You can go there, you can share your testimony, you can see a lot of resources, some of the previous forums, and also participate or view the forum in New London. But actually, you don't want to miss the opportunity to come down to the Whaling City. And our city hall is not quite this opulent or big, but it is certainly as historic, and we just finished a historic renovation of the building. So I look forward to seeing you. And guess what? This is our second summer with air conditioning.
And I think I just wanted to add again before we close, during that time, before we get to the next meeting, this commission is going to be doing a lot of engaging with those youth that we were talking about, the reentry population, those that are, maybe in juvenile detention settings and so on. So we will have some feedback on that on the next commission meeting. And I just do want to see a couple people. I'll come to you after, sorry. So that concludes. Yeah, boom. Adjourn.